Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. I'm glad that you can join me on this, what are we at, 253rd episode of the new iteration of this particular channel. As you can read the title, and I'm pretty sure you've seen the news, there is a deal that Hamas and Israel has apparently agreed to. Now, people are reporting this as a ceasefire, as if it's taking place immediately. If it is taking place immediately, that will be a shock to the people who are being murdered right now, because as we speak, Israelis are still killing Palestinians. They're driving tanks through various neighborhoods and opening fire on civilians. And so, again, if it is indeed a ceasefire currently, that will be a shock to many Palestinians who are losing their lives as we speak. Apparently, the deal is supposed to take effect after Israel signs it, or the Knesset signs it. And several things are supposed to kick in. One, there's supposed to be a withdrawal by Israeli troops that is going to take place in stages. Hostages are supposed to be released by Israel and by Hamas. The end to the war is supposed to be acknowledged. And from my understanding, even though this isn't necessarily being reported, and maybe it is being reported in somewhat of a backwards way, everything that I see keeps pointing out the first phase has been agreed upon, not 21 points. Just to make the point clear, well, 2 points clear. One, Palestinians are still being killed. Let's show that first, just so you don't have to take my word for it. This is Gaza. There are tanks that are riding through, and there are people who are being fired upon. As for the other part, supposedly, and I guess the language is very important because this language keeps being repeated. Hamas and Israel has agreed to the first phase of the agreement. And if you, whatever you're looking at, you keep saying first phase. I keep using that term, first phase. So I don't get the sense, but at the very least, I get the sense that some of this other stuff is going to be litigated and still going to be negotiated. Whereas certain agreements are supposed to be in play of, let's say, not restarting the war and those type of things. I suppose we'll see. I mean, nearly every country around the world agreed and came into place saying, hey, this is an agreement. We should go with this agreement. Nearly every world leader, I have yet to come across a world leader that has turned this down, saying they disagreed with the premise of this. Even Putin has even come out and said as much. So I suppose we'll see. Maybe there's something deeper going on to this. It may be just as simple as so many people are being murdered that they want the murdering to stop. I don't know. I don't know how people look at this and are skeptical, frankly. Every deal that Israel has put forth, or let's say the U.S. has put forth, or Hamas has agreed upon, Hamas has agreed. And going all the way even back to the Biden administration, Israel has done everything in their power to avoid coming to some kind of terms or any kind of agreement. And every time they broke an agreement, the U.S. would turn around and blame Hamas. So right here, this is RT reporting this. Again, the language is important. Qatari Foreign Minister spokesperson confirms the agreement reached on all aspects of the Gaza peace deal first phase. In the war, release the hostages and the Palestinian prisoners who are also hostages. Entry of aid into Gaza, withdrawal of Israeli troops. That is supposed to be the terms of the first phase that is agreed upon. Now, there were 21 points or 20 points in Donald Trump's deal. And everything that I've read 4 or 5 articles on this, they keep stressing first phase of the deal, first phase of the deal, first phase of the deal is agreed upon. And so then you think to yourself, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? I take it to mean that at the very least, these few items are supposed to be implemented by both sides. So we will see if those items are implemented. And to be clear, Hamas, one of the negotiators associated with this, pointed out that back in 2024, this is basically the same deal that Hamas was willing to accept, and that this deal could have been done over a year ago. There's that. The second part to this is, if Israel had the strength to do what they wanted to do, this deal wouldn't be necessary. So I guess my take is there's an exhausted military that is seeking a way to rest. And in seeking a way to rest, this deal was their way out of it. By the same token, you had a Gaza that has been fundamentally devastated. And Hamas, who was looking for a way out of it, again, was willing to accept this deal going back a year ago. Now, there are other sticking points. Disarmament. Is Hamas really going to give up their guns? Is Israel really going to attend to the deal? There are also sorts of holes in this deal that could be violated. Is Donald Trump really going to be the doom bringer when Israel violates the deal? Meaning, is he going to be an honest actor and point out, hey, Israel is violating the deal? Or is he just going to do what every other president has done and say, well, Hamas is violating the deal, even though that's not really, it hasn't been the case? There are all sorts of questions associated with this. By the same token, there are people who are celebrating in the streets. I mean, I was looking at the images, and obviously you can understand why they're celebrating in the streets. They've been getting murdered en masse for the last 2 years. But I would put a bit of caution on that celebration. I'm trying to find the clips of them celebrating. By the way, this is Donald Trump. Donald Trump came out, of course, going on his megaphone, Fox News. Listen to what he says here, because this is
Israel again.
Ludicrous. But again, it's Trump, right?
So good for Israel. I spoke to Bibi Netanyahu just a little while ago. He called. He said, I can't believe it. He said, everybody's liking me now. Meaning him. He said, I said, more importantly, they're loving Israel again. And they really are. I said, Israel cannot fight the world, baby. They can't fight the world. And he understands that very well. So it's amazing the way it's all come together. And it's a beautiful picture. I don't know if it could ever happen again. It was just a set of circumstances. Like, for instance, taking out the potential nuclear power of Iran. So many different things happened that were so amazing. It's a lot of talent involved, I'll tell you, but there was a certain degree of luck too. You know, you need luck also.
It's not luck. You went on a murder spree for the last 2 years, committing a genocide, murdering women and children en masse. That's not luck. That's you putting money into a genocide. As for people like Bibi, I have no idea what he's talking about. The man is literally a war criminal with an ICC arrest warrant over his head. I don't see it. This entire deal hinges upon trusting Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump. I'm not going to down it. I'm going to resist everything in me from doing that, because you've watched so many people get murdered, right? You do want the killing to stop. That's a human impulse. But trust, yeah, that's a heavy hurdle to get over. I'm going to bring on my guest, and maybe he'll have a certain point of view on what's taking place. We are joined, the man, the legend, Dr. Wilmer Leon. How you doing, Dr. Leon?
Man, I'm talking to Jamal Thomas. That means I'm going to mess around and find something out.
Are you? I was hoping to mess around and find something out with you.
Yeah, what you find out of me, you don't really want to know.
Oh, good.
What's going
Okay,
on?
so this does kind of work. I've been playing around with backgrounds, trying to get one of these things straight to look better. I don't like this background though, so let's go to the regular one, and I'll fix that later. A deal is on the table. A deal has been accepted. Israel has still been murdering Palestinians despite the fact that the deal is on the table. Apparently, they're saying they have to wait until it's ratified by the Knesset, and up to that point, they're going to continue to murder people. I'm resisting everything in me from downing this deal. Everything in me, I'm resisting. I don't have skin in the game, in the real sense of the word. So it's not my kids getting murdered. It's not my wife getting murdered, even though I don't have a wife. It's not my dogs getting kicked and killed. By the same token, distrust. Oh, distrust is radical. Give me your take on this. Maybe they're seeing something that I'm not. I mean, every world leader has come out and effectively said, we back this deal. Even Putin, who was like, yeah, we back this deal. I had coffee with Tony Blair, and this kind of weird commentary about Tony Blair. I'm also seeing something very specific in the way that this deal is being talked about. They keep saying a deal is reached on the first phase of the deal, meaning they keep saying first phase. Everything that I've read up to this point, it says first phase of the deal has been agreed upon. First phase of the deal has been agreed upon. So obviously this is not 20 points. What they've agreed upon is in the war, release the Israeli hostages and Palestinian hostages, entry of aid into Gaza, and withdrawal of Israeli troops. And apparently that withdrawal is supposed to take place in stages. Give me your point of view. This has been 2 years. We've on the anniversary of October 7th, 2 days beyond the anniversary. What are your thoughts?
Well, in listening to your open, one of the questions that you posed was, how can you sit and watch humans get slaughtered? And the simple answer to that question is the Zionist Israeli government does not see the Palestinians as human. So I think that's the simple answer to that question. They are white supremacists who don't see the Palestinians as human. And I know this to be fact because in talking to Israeli Americans who were taught in Israeli schools, that's what they were taught. When you talk to Miko Peled, he will tell you what he was taught in elementary school, what he was taught in high school. Very similar to the white racist Southerners in Mississippi and in Alabama and in Arkansas. They were taught that African Americans were subhuman. So that's the first. I mean, they being the racist white Southerners, they even created a pseudoscience called eugenics as a rationale to support their genocide in the United States. And we know, of course, that whether it was the apartheid in South Africa or the apartheid and genocide that we're seeing play itself out in historic Palestine, that it was patterned after the United States. You mentioned
Please.
trust. I can't speak for the Palestinians because I'm not close enough to the circumstance to be able to, but I will raise these questions. And they're questions that I've been asking for a very long time. One is, how do you sit and negotiate? And in another life, that's what I did. I was a contracts negotiator in the telecom industry. Mm-hmm. With someone who has already made it very, very clear through their own statements and actions that their primary focus is your extermination. How do you negotiate with that? I don't, and that's not a rhetorical question. I don't know the answer to that question. How can you negotiate with someone who has sworn for years? Folks, this doesn't have anything to do with October 7th of 2023. This goes back to 1946. October 7th, 1923 was a response by Hamas to the travesties and the genocide that's been going on since 1946. That has to be very clear. Yeah. How do you trust a government that murdered your negotiators while they were in Qatar, allegedly, supposedly working on a negotiation? You sent a missile into the, if they had not left their phones on the table as they went to the mosque to pray, most of them would be dead now. That's what saved their lives. It was time for Juma. They left their phones in the conference room where they had been meeting, went to pray, missile comes into the room. How do you trust the supposed independent arbiter, the United States, who first of all greenlit that move, murdered General Qasem Soleimani as he was in Iraq
for negotiations,
negotiating a peace deal between the Saudis and the United States. And I believe he was operating, if not at the behest of, clearly with the agreement of the United States. How do you trust that? I don't know the answer to that question.
What's the alternative? That's the rub, right? I mean, you have a situation where they've been murdering people.
The alternative in a resistance movement is to continue to resist. But if that's easy for me to say, sitting here in my office, I don't think a missile's going to come through my window. But how can I trust Kristi Noem and, that a Black Hawk helicopter won't fly over my roof and ICE agents won't rappel on top and break up my solar panels? I can't trust that. So my very simplistic answer is, what do you do? And I don't, please do not take this as a criticism of Hamas, because I'm not there. I don't know.
Right.
You asked me, what do you do? As a resistance movement, you continue to resist. This may very well be, and I'm using this statement to make the point, not to accuse anyone of anything. He who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. So this may very well be a move on their part, very similar to what the Ukraine did with the
back. Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank now on the name.
Minsk agreements. Well, the Minsk agreements, where they effectively build up this huge military. Yeah.
This may be a Minsk move. You're a chess player. This may be, you might find this move on the chessboard. It's called the Minsk move.
Yeah.
I bring my rooks back only to bring them forward. I move my bishops, and
Briar defense. Knight deceive Briar defense.
Could now become a Minsk move.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I just I guess my feeling is the same as
Wait a
yours.
minute. If I don't say this, I'll forget. The independent arbiter, supposedly the United States, in a negotiation says, if you don't sign, we're going to obliterate you. What?
That's the independent arbiter.
That's the independent
That's the independent guy.
That's the guy with the deal.
And by the way, Trump has been doing this bizarre role where he thinks that people actually believe that he's some kind of mediator. Like if you in Ukraine, same thing, right? You're putting all of this money into a war, you're sending weapons, you're threatening some tomahawks, you're saying all of this stuff, and you're claiming to be a negotiator. And in this, you're giving Israel any and everything in its power to murder as many people as it wants, including political cover, as it does so. Even going after political opposition in the United States, which is radically anti-American, because after all, we have the First Amendment in this country, and still act as if I'm the mediator. How are you a mediator? Israel is your rogue, quote unquote, rogue actor that goes out and does and affects policy in the Middle East on behalf of the United States. And I'm the mediator in this. I should get a Nobel Peace Prize.
Donald Trump says, sign it or we'll obliterate you. You know my affinity for The Godfather. Kay asked Mike, who's that scary, scary man sitting over there? Mike says, oh, that's a very scary man. Who is he, Mike? That's Luca Brasi. Who is he? Oh, he does things for my father from time to time. He went in when the band leader wouldn't release his godson and wouldn't sign the deal for $10,000. Luca pulls out a pistol and says, either your brains or your signature are going to be on the agreement. The next day, he signed a certified check for $1,000. How did he do that? My father made him an offer he couldn't refuse. That's straight gangster.
It is. It is. He can pull that on weaker bodies. No. Obviously, he can't do that
when
he's dealing with equals.
Game ain't over.
No, it's not that I think the game is over. I guess from my point of view, I kind of look at it in the way that you look at it. Like everything in me, feeling-wise, hates this because I don't trust this.
You can't trust
everything he says in every other situation. We've been here before. Hey, there's a deal on the table. Joe Biden gets a deal, quote unquote. They're going to end the conflict. Israel does something to kill the deal. And what does the U.S. do? Invariably, that damn Hamas. That damn Hamas keeps foiling the deal. And it's like, so when we've been here 3 or 4 times before, what am I to think? I'm to think Israel does something to kill the deal. They're doing Hamas.
They're doing it right now.
Well, they're murdering people en masse.
That the whole card, or the Trump card, no pun intended. And I asked this to Laith Marouf yesterday. Ansar Allah. Where's Ansar Allah in this? And I think missiles are going to two things are, I think, could very well happen. One is even though Ansar Allah has said that I think that they'll go along with whatever Hamas tells them to go along with.
Right.
That the United States / Israel, because that's basically one contingent, will then try to turn their sights on Ansar Allah, who will then say, well, all bets are off. We're going in both feet, 10 toes down, and or the United States and Israel will now take this as the green light to attack Israel, to attack Iran. And that will scuttle the deal. Because the one thing that Minister Farrakhan was very clear, never underestimate the blindness that attends arrogance. You don't see with your eyes, you see with a combination of your heart and your mind. Mm-hmm. And your eyes are blinding you to the realities that are right in front of you. And so if in fact the Knesset approves this, if in fact Israel withdraws to the agreed to border, if in fact they stop their extermination of Palestinians, it's not going to last long.
Yeah.
Because the objective of Israel is to exterminate the Palestinians.
There's also something else that I don't think people entirely realize, that if Israel had the military capability that it wanted and boasted about, they wouldn't be signing this deal.
No.
Meaning, I get the sense that this deal is our military is exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
We need a breather and we need a way out of this.
It's a Minsk agreement.
It's a Minsk agreement.
From the other perspective.
Yeah.
From the other side. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, pay attention to the headlines. If the Knesset does approve the deal, and we know one of the sticking points is, even if this is even fathomable, that there are people more conservative than Netanyahu, and there are people more evil than him, if that is even possible, like Smotrich and Gavir.
They've already been complaining, by the way.
You didn't go far enough. You didn't kill enough. There are Palestinians still alive. No, we can't accept this. We have to kill them all. So we'll see. But they will, the point I was going to make is, they will see this as victory. But those of us who know, you basically got taken to a standstill, and you're claiming the standstill as victory. But when you're, see, one of the other points here is this keeps getting described as and defined as a war. It is not a war. These are not two equal parties engaged in conflict. This is not a war. The Zionist government of Israel is occupying the space called Gaza, called the West Bank, called Palestine. They are occupying the space. That is why, according to the United Nations, this is not Wilmer Leon being anti-whatever, Semitic, the occupied territories. That's still what that space is officially recognized as, the occupied territories.
Mm-hmm.
That means that the Zionist government of Israel is the occupier, and the Palestinians are the occupied. It's not a war. It's a resistance to occupation. And some may think, oh, Wilmer, potato.
No.
The language is very important, because the ability to define is the ability to control.
So true. I keep making the point that just because you can kill a lot of people doesn't mean you can accomplish your objectives. And
absolutely not.
Because I think people look at this and think, well, man, they've murdered over 100,000 people. Obviously, this is, decimation. And as I point out, yeah, but the majority of those weren't enemy combatants. Meaning those weren't people who resist. Those were just women and children, the majority of which were just children.
Yeah.
Killing a lot of people is not the United States was able to kill millions of Vietnamese. It lost the war.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about how many people you murder, unless you're Israel and just put murder as part of your agenda. But that is not the same thing as winning a conflict and winning a war. What Israel wanted was either extermination or, at the very least, expel all of those Palestinians out of that region. Those Palestinians are still there. Hamas still exists.
And this is, I believe, what at this stage of the process, the Zionists are truly afraid of. Those children will grow up, and those children will return, and they won't be happy.
I have a clip of an Israeli woman talking about those kids.
Because
she's like, you got to kill all of them.
You also have to understand the mindset. You have to understand the culture. There's a great piece written by a late Palestinian psychiatrist, Dr. Iyad Siraj. It's called "Why We Blow Ourselves Up." You can find it. It's just a one-page article. It was in Time Magazine, 2002. If you just Google "Why We Blow Ourselves Up," it should be the first thing that comes up. And I think that this is in the piece. If not, it's in one of the two interviews that I did with him before he passed. And that is, they don't forget. See, in the West, we have very short memories in the West. Part of it has to do with the fact that the United States is only 249 years old, whereas they're thousands of years old. So when they say this isn't over, they don't mean me and you. They mean it ain't over till it's over. If my great grandson has to walk into your living room with a grenade in his pants, he's going to walk in and handle his business, because we will never stop telling the story. The story of the Nakba will never be. You can kill a whole lot of Palestinians, but you can't kill the story of the Nakba. You can't, Donald Trump, no matter what you do with the African American History Museum, you can't erase African American history.
Right.
And so, y'all can lounge around the Mediterranean at your new resort all you want. And when that Palestinian waiter hands you that drink with the cyanide in it, God bless you.
I think part of it too is it's kind of like the abuser not fully grasping or not caring about the abuse that he imparts.
What did Seeley say to Mr.? What did Seeley say? Until you do right by me, everything you touch. Hey.
But it's true, right?
For real.
Like, trauma sticks. And the people who impart that trauma,
more than pleasure.
They're very ready to just, I don't know why you're still complaining about that. Why is that still an issue?
Right.
Why are you still, slavery?
I slapped you last week. What's your problem?
Yeah, what's your problem? Why you still complaining?
Annie Mae, what's your problem?
And mind you, these are the same people who are permanent victims of something that happened like 100 years ago, that still bathe in that as their cultural identity. And anything that comes up, they would use, well, we were in the Holocaust, so you should give us money. We were in the Holocaust, so you should, talk to us like children, or not bring up, the fact that we're stuff back.
Give me my stuff back. That painting that's hanging in some millionaire's dining room over the dining room table belonged to my great grandfather, and you stole it from him in 1938. I want it back. And I'm going to go to court and I'm going to get it back. Because I have a photograph of my grandfather's living room, and there's the painting, the movie The Equalizer 2. One of the subplots in The Equalizer 2 is the old cat that's trying to get that painting back. Mm-hmm. That was taken from his grandparents.
Oh, during the Holocaust.
If you remember if you ever saw the Equalizer 2.
Saw the first one, didn't see the second.
Second one's very good. One of the subplots is there's a older Jewish guy who's in his 80s that has been, for the last 40 years, trying to get this painting back that he saw in a magazine that actually was stolen from his parents during World War II. Mm-hmm. And I won't tell you the outcome, but because you should see the movie. It's very good. Anyway, no, and see, that kind of narrative in a film is one of those very subtle mechanisms that demonstrates how media is used to continue to tell a story. They weave this narrative into a film so that people like me and people like you will continue to think. But see, I'll just leave it there. That's a whole nother conversation we could have about the power of the media and how the media is used to perpetuate narratives.
Yes. Well, look how it's used now: hostages versus prisoners.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, those people are hostages. Yeah, those people are captive every bit as much.
They're captives.
Yeah, it leaks out of everything that's being said, the way that the media frames the stuff.
Nobody talks about the Hannibal directive.
They do not.
Which other than to say it isn't true, but if you can find stories in Haaretz that validates the reality. Netanyahu don't give a damn about the hostages, about the captives, about the whatever you want to call them, the folks that got took. He don't give a damn about those people because they have an established order within the IDF. We don't negotiate for the return of. In fact, we'll shoot them ourselves.
They did shoot them themselves.
If we know that they're about to be taken, we will shoot them ourselves. So you can't use them as leverage.
Hundreds of Israelis were shot by Israel on October 7th. Hundreds. Like whatever that number is, But again, when the media talks about it, 1,200 people were killed on October 7th, ignoring the fact that 400 or 500 of them were killed by Israel themselves.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're absolutely right in the way that the media talks about stuff.
Look it up. Don't sit here listen to this and say, oh, Jamal and Wilmer are. No, what we're doing is we're telling you what they are saying. It's in Haaretz, which is a liberal Jewish newspaper. Look it up.
Yeah, don't take my word for it. It's true.
What did Malcolm say? If my telling you the truth makes you angry, don't get angry at me. Get angry at the truth.
Yeah. So I have very mixed feelings about this.
I don't. My feelings are pretty clear. Ain't no mix here.
It's mixed only because I don't.
I get your point.
Yeah, it's like, okay, does the killing stop, even if it's for a period of time?
No.
Well, I mean, it may just for a period, because the question that people ask is that when I was reading this stuff from the hostage negotiator, I mean, not the hostage negotiator, the guy who helped effectively negotiate the deal and was in some respects a back channel. And he points out that the same deal was available over a year ago, that Hamas was more than open to take this deal, and that it was the Biden administration that just wouldn't move on it. And at a certain point, they realized, okay, well, the Biden administration is too weak, and they need something else in order to push this deal through, because ultimately Netanyahu would accept whatever Trump pushes through. Meaning, if Trump says, this is what we're doing, they're a client of the U.S., ultimately, right? And he said up to that point, they could never get Biden to move on it. And then Netanyahu obviously didn't want to move on it, in which case it languished.
Well, who's the they? Who's the they that couldn't see? Because as soon as you say Biden wouldn't move on it and Netanyahu wouldn't move on it, then who's the they? Because that says to me, it's not on Biden. Netanyahu didn't pick up the phone and say, Sleepy Joe, put down your ice cream. We got some business to handle. Because remember, Netanyahu in the Oval sat next to Sleepy Joe and said, Joe Biden said, I'm a Zionist. I'm an Irish Zionist. And Joe Biden said, I'm a Zionist. And Netanyahu said, you're an Irish Zionist, which lets you know that not all Jews are Zionists and not all Zionists are Jews.
Well, yeah, and
So-
obviously, and making a distinction.
who's
some
the
are more equal
they?
than others.
See, I think I don't know. And again, if I don't know, I'm gonna tell you I don't know. I don't know that this is a Joe Biden, Donald Trump thing. I don't. When
What do you
someone
mean? Explain that.
well, because you said
Well, I was only
the
going by
deal
what
was on the
negotiators
table a
were saying.
year ago and Joe Biden wouldn't take it.
Right. That they were
And then
trying to
you
push
said-
him and he wouldn't touch it.
So who's the they? In that pronoun they, who's the they that couldn't push Biden but's pushing? I don't know who the they are.
Oh, you mean who the negotiator was in this case?
Okay,
So the way I can only go by the way he explains it.
okay,
And
okay.
he points out that the deal had been on the table. Nobody would pick it up. Hamas was willing to accept that deal. That this is effectively the same deal
Mm-hmm.
that a year ago
Right,
that Netanyahu wouldn't touch, Joe Biden wouldn't touch.
right.
He says they went to negotiations in Qatar. Qatar was bombed, at which point Hamas was like, we're out. It's like, obviously, it took the United States to be involved in this. Trump sends a message saying, hey, we weren't involved. They don't believe him, nor should they have believed him.
Right.
The negotiator keep pushing on this particular issue, and eventually they get everybody to come to the table. Trump picks up the deal. And the belief, and again, this is their belief, is that because Donald Trump has taken such a lead in this and put his face on it, that he's more inclined to ensure that the deal, at the very least, lasts for a period of time. Now, I don't know why they think that. I don't know why they think that.
That's true. And the reason you are skeptical is you are very correct in your skepticism because it isn't true.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Yeah.
No.
We'll see.
You can't. That sounds more like Donald Trump Nobel Peace Prize propaganda than reality.
But see, that's the rub, right? You have these people who are looking. That entire deal is set with Israel framing, and again, the only part that seems to be accepted is the first part. The other stuff,
Because there won't be a second part.
right? I mean, because like you think, the first part of the deal, the first part of the deal, the first part of the deal, which, you know, that word is very specific, right? It's not like Hamas has accepted the entire deal. It's not that. The other stuff is apparently going to still be negotiated.
Because
Which means,
here's the question, or one of the questions. The first part of the deal is the release of the captives and the Palestinian prisoners. Netanyahu doesn't give a damn about those lives, but politically for Netanyahu, based upon the pressure that's being put upon him by the families of those people, he's got to make that go away. So the first part of the deal is what he really needs politically in his own country, well, the country they're occupying, to make that go away. He can turn to those families and say, I got your remains back. I got your live son back. After that, this is one of the things I'm trying to figure out. The only leverage that I see that the Palestinians have left are the captives. You give them up right up front off the jump, and what do you have left?
apparently a guarantee from Donald Trump that they won't resume the war.
And
you look at that
how
and
in
think,
the hell
yes,
can you trust that maniac?
I don't have an answer for that. I don't have an answer for
All
that.
he does is lie.
I don't have an answer for that.
That's why the Epstein files have not been released, because he's a liar.
Well, maybe he's in those files. That's why.
Well, no, but you know, he ran on, I'm going to release the Epstein files. I'm going to release the Epstein files. pictures of you with scantily clad women hand clasping buttocks. How can you? I don't know.
They got to have their reasons. I can only go by Hamas on this one, I can only go by what Hamas wants.
So they know something. Obviously, they know many things I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do know
they're living through.
Can't trust Donald Trump. I know that.
No, you cannot. You cannot. Speaking of can't trust Donald Trump, Russia has put out recently, and this was the foreign minister. What is his name? Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rabakov.
Mm-hmm.
And he puts out what seems to be obviously true at this point, considering Donald Trump is threatening to send missiles, Tomahawk missiles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I haven't spent a huge amount of time talking about the Tomahawk missiles because from my point of view, it's not a thing until it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Until those things are sent, until those things are armed by the United States, it's not really a thing, it's a bluff. And it's one thing to bluff somebody who is weaker than you. It is another thing to bluff when you have no cards and they know you have no cards. By the same token, the very fact that you're willing to do that gets across something, meaning it means something, right? That's not just random. Rabakov is making the point of saying all the momentum that was summit has effectively failed.
Mm-hmm.
That the meeting and everything else, all of the goodwill that might have been there, and this idea that they're moving in a particular direction, all of that has stopped. That is over with.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a building, I think he described it as a building that is broken to its foundation.
Mm-hmm.
That this is a building that needs to be rebuilt. It's not something that can just be plastered over and fixed to move forward. Give me your take on that. I mean, I will tell you this, and I'm always interested in taking people who worked at the radio station on stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
When we first left the station, effectively fired by the federal government, the federal government got involved. There was this thought by many at the station, okay, is this going to be resolved? And is this going to be resolved in a few months? Is this going to be resolved at all? Meaning, many people took what Donald Trump was saying, or at the very least was hoping that what Trump was saying was going to be some level of legit, that I'm going to end the war, it's not my war, et cetera, et cetera. What people don't realize, though, is that Donald Trump is terrified of being blamed for failing in Ukraine, which is, there's no way out that box, because either one way or the other, you're going to fail in Ukraine. Either you make a deal or you try to save face in some kind of deal, or you just fail in Ukraine. And he seems to be of mind that, well, I could just sell them weapons and they could just keep going indefinitely. So it won't look like I failed in Ukraine. Whatever other schmo gets in, at some point they'll collapse, and they'll collapse on their watch, not on my watch, because I'm just going to keep giving them weapons, missing the fact that they're going to run out of bodies. Give me your take on this. Did you think that, one, did you think Trump was serious? And B, give me your thoughts on what Rabakov is saying.
One of the big mistakes, because I, like you, was hearing a lot of that same analysis.
Mm-hmm. And
the flaw in the analysis is that it's actually Trump that matters. And this kind of goes back to the point I was making when we were talking about the deal was on the table for Biden, and now this is not administration specific policy. This is American foreign policy, irregardless of who is at the Resolute desk. So when Donald Trump comes in saying, I'm going to end this war, you don't end nothing until Raytheon and Lockheed Martin tell you can, along with the ideologues that, have bought into the Brzezinski full spectrum and the whole full spectrum dominance thing. No. So I listened to that, but I couldn't understand how they those that were subscribing to that, I think they were giving Donald Trump too much credit. Because now what has happened is Europe has picked up the mantle. And Europe is now implementing a lot of the same neoliberal policies that a lot of the European economies are being crippled by the very same neoliberal policies and ideologies that have crippled the American economy. Mercedes, the German auto industry has, because the German auto industry has been on the decline for a number of years, they're shifting away from auto making to weapons manufacturing. Sounds like World War II in the United States to me.
Well, I mean, there's a difference.
Huh?
There's a difference. Europe doesn't have an industrial base. They don't have a
no. Just a very simple point. Just a very simple point of domestic industrial capacity being shifted to military capacity. That's the only parallel I'm drawing there. France is doing the same thing. Greece and Italy were doing this relative to the neoliberal policies, not necessarily the militaristic aspect of it, but we first started hearing the problems with the implementation of neoliberalism in Italy and in Greece 10 years ago. And now France's people are in the street because their social safety net programs are being decimated at the expense of neoliberalism. Germany, their social safety net programs are being decimated at the expense of neoliberalism. So Germany is now on this track. So and Russia and this conflict in Ukraine is being utilized as the rationale for why this has to be done. That's been the number one on their hit parade in terms of selling this whole flawed BS to the people. We have to defend ourselves. Putin is a madman. He's going to take over Europe, and then he's going to the moon.
Not in that order.
To infinity and beyond.
Right.
So the train has left the station, but Donald Trump is not the conductor on this train.
He's a very weak man.
He might be at the brake, but he ain't conducting the train.
He is shockingly weak for a president. I mean, Joe Biden was weak also, but Donald Trump is the one who fashions himself as a tough guy. But he's not.
But Donald Trump had no worldview. Donald Trump is a fool.
No, I agreed. But even a fool, like I'll give you an example. Joe Biden might have been out of his mind. Like his brain might have been mush. Like if you put him under an X-ray, it'd be like, "Whoa, this looks like Jello."
Right.
But he had one thought.
It was Play-Doh.
Play-Doh, thank you. But he had one thought. We need to keep moving forward. We need to get Ukraine and NATO. We need to do so and so. Meaning he has his thoughts in regards to this kind of American primacy, even though it's delusional, even though it's not realistic. He had thoughts in that direction and was willing to push in that direction, even to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars, even to the tune of pushing Europe, even to the tune of, bringing us to the brink of Third World War. He was willing to do it because that was his ideology. As you point out, Trump doesn't have an ideology in a sense. At least I don't think he does. I think he's a petty, tiny man who, if you prick him, he will bleed and scream. That's who he is, right? So you get a little pressure from Europe, and he tells Europe whatever he needs to. Hey, we got security guarantees, etc. Okay, none of that stuff happened, right? Russia didn't give you squat. Putin told you exactly what he wanted. That's what he told you. How you explain it to the Europeans is something fundamentally different. But he gets nothing out of it because he has no cards in that situation. And so he's doing everything in his power to get cards. Okay, we're going to work with Ukrainians to go after the gas thing. So we're going to blow up gas fuel tanks and all of the stuff around Russia. We're going to try to go after Europe in order to get them to stop doing gas. Meaning he's a man in search of leverage in order to assert some kind of strength that he just doesn't have, can't find. And so you end up with where we are now, where the Europeans would say, hey, we don't want to do anything that ends this conflict because we're also delusional every bit as much as you are. And Trump is stuck in this kind of weird spot of, well, I might send tomahawks, as if that's going to change the context of the situation. I think you're right. I don't think he has an ideology in the way that Joe Biden has. So any push just pushes him. Last guy in the room is the guy that he effectively listens to and will tell you whatever you need to hear as a salesman and as a con artist.
Joe Biden was surrounded by ideologues, people, for example, from the Brzezinski school.
Yes.
Between two ages, Brzezinski. He was surrounded by Anthony Blinken, ally versus ally. These were, for as sick as these people were and are, they did have a worldview. Trump is surrounded by incompetence. He is, because most of the people that are standing around him at the Resolute desk, they're there because they contributed to the campaign, right? And their sycophants, the Peter principle, most of them have been promoted to their levels of incompetence. They don't know what they're doing. Look at the woman that's prosecuting Comey. Yeah. Walks into the wrong courtroom, sits on the wrong side of the courtroom, and hands the judge 3 conflicting documents of which she has signed. And the judge says, what in the world is this? I don't know. What do you mean? I don't know. So I'm not saying Joe Biden was right. At least he had a world view, right? And he had something upon which to base decisions. Donald Trump is a transactional boob who can only he can't think beyond the immediate piece of paper in front of him. There's no long-term objective here. Mm-mm. So, but again, the train, now Europe is on board, and the Europeans are following the United States down this rabbit hole. People need to ask themselves, whatever happened to the Nord Stream pipeline? Remember that? And who blew that up and why that got blown up? And that blew up everything.
Yeah. Dr. Leon, always appreciate talking to you, man. I learned something in all these conversations. I really do.
Thank you. You just need to get out more. That's all.
Is that what it is? Dr. Wilmer Leon, radio host, political scientist, nationally syndicated columnist, host of Connecting the Dots, and also Sirius radio station. What is the name of that show, please?
Inside the Issue, Saturdays from 11 to 2 p.m. Eastern.
Check them out.
You Channel 126.
Fantastic rest of your day, man. Right. Thank you for this. Be safe. All right. I see my next guest. He's in the background. We are joined with the one, the only Laith Marouf. How you doing, Laith? You doing okay today? Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Sorry, I had it on mute because I didn't want my sound
How you doing,
to get in while Wilmer was there. I'm doing good. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I am conflicted. I am conflicted. And maybe you can help me with that, being conflicted. And just for the audience, Laith Marouf, he's an award-winning multimedia producer and policy law consultant. You can check out Free Palestine TV or freepalestine.video. Either one of those will bring up his content. He does fantastic work. Definitely check him out. Laith, so apparently a deal, quote unquote, has been agreed upon between Hamas and Israel. And I'm calling it quote unquote because this is not the quote 20-point plan in the way that people are implicitly making it out to be. This seems to be very narrow in its scope. And it is into the war, release of the Israeli hostages and Palestinian hostages, entry of aid into Gaza. I think they're talking about 600 trucks a day. And Israel apparently is supposed to pull back its military over the course of the next week or so. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, obviously, it's 2 years too late. The
Yes.
ceasefire, the genocide has gone on for 2 years, and we are going to finally get a true, image of the amount of destruction and death. But as you said, this is not the surrender agreement that Trump originally was touting. It's very simple. There will be 20 Israeli prisoners of war released for a whopping 2,000 Palestinian prisoners in exchange. And there will be a ceasefire, as we are supposed to have actually entered that ceasefire 3 hours ago, but the Zionist military still is bombarding the edges of Gaza City, targeting people as they're moving and celebrating in the main streets. So the genocide hasn't stopped yet. I wonder when the bombardment will stop, but we'll see if Trump can actually hold his word. If there is no stopping of the bombardment, there will be no exchange of anything, and there will be no ceasefire. The other thing that you mentioned there is correct. Like there will be finally beginnings of aid coming into the Gaza Strip in numbers that are significant, and there will be a retreat of the Israeli occupation forces to a buffer zone inside the Gaza Strip that is very limited. So people will begin going back to their villages and towns to check on their homes, and life should be getting back. Now, all of this is in the air. I think we all can presume that it's different than all the other ceasefires because of how quickly it was called in and how little parts to it there is. It's not a huge document. And so if it comes into effect, then truly what was supposed to be a document of surrender for Hamas just a few weeks ago is now a declaration of victory. I remember a occupation force can, if it doesn't win a war, it loses it. While an occupied people, as long as they don't lose the war, they've won it. And this is what is the situation here. 2 years, glory to the martyrs, glory to the military leaders that fought this war. 2 years in enclosed, besieged extermination camp withstood the combined might militarily of the empire, its combined financial power, its combined propaganda power, and defeated them all. Today, not only did the empire lose this war in front of the determined, heroic Palestinian people, but all of the propaganda machine of the West has been smashed, destroyed. It is 80 years of accumulative propaganda and brainwashing of humanity that has been wiped out by the steadfastness of the Palestinian people. Imagine if this war lasted just a few months and the Palestinian people were defeated. Would there be right now the collective consciousness that we have, not only on Palestine, not only on Zionism, not only on the situation of the collaboration of the West with Zionism? We now, I think most of humanity has been able to see the granular details of power projection in the world. Everybody now understands in the West the limits of their theatrical democracies. There is a rejection of the whole system worldwide. What we see in the streets of Berlin and London, and now what we see in the streets of Portland and Chicago and California, those are all indicators of the collapse of the power structures that govern, because there is no more possibility for it to sustain its power. And that is all because, thanks to the martyrs of Palestine, the martyrs of Gaza, that refused to surrender in those 2 years, that allowed humanity to catch up and wake up. With every attempt to end this genocide, a populace in a different country discovered the mechanisms of power that actually govern them, and discovered the propaganda machine that controls their mind. Every nation on this planet went through this process over the last 2 years, thanks to the steadfastness of the Palestinian people.
It's some people are asking, and I'm not one of them. I guess I feel conflicted in this, and I guess I feel conflicted because part of me, not just part of me, I don't trust this deal. Every other situation that we've been presented with, where they've come up with some kind of deal, one thing has taken place: Israel will break the deal or violate the deal, and the United States will turn around and said that damn Hamas. Hamas broke the deal, and so Israel can go on another murder spree. The people who are celebrating in the streets, how do they see it? I mean, do they see it in these kind of skeptical terms, or is it just the killing is stopped? That is enough.
Look, I think there is no Palestinian on this planet that doesn't know that there is nobody more vicious, more treacherous than the Zionists. Okay, so I mean, since childhood to your deathbed, as a Palestinian, you have to deal with the supremacy of Zionism and its murderous urges. Okay, so I don't think there's any Palestinian that is deluded, that thinks that this is the end of the story. The end of the story is the end of the Zionist colony. And we have already, by the way, I think, passed many stages of no return for this Zionist colony. Okay. Now, do I think that there's a big possibility this ceasefire will not last? Yeah, there's a big possibility that it wouldn't last. In the meanwhile, if there is a cessation of hostilities, no matter how short-lived it may be, we have to remember there is a people that have been living under genocide and starvation, deliberate famine for 2 years.
Yes.
And we have to wish for them even that 1 minute of reprieve from this. Okay. So, and it's clear that, look, the new ceasefire agreement, there is no handing over of Hamas's weapons. Resistance has no obligation to hand over any of its weapons. The resistance in Palestine has no obligation to hand over the rule to the vampire Tony Blair, okay, the viceroy. This is a desperate move, really, honestly, by the United States and Israel to stop the fighting. They themselves, the United States and the Zionist colony, need a ceasefire. The world is at a boiling point. And the United States is busy right now in the beginnings of a civil war. The streets in all of Europe are on fire. And if this war continues, this way. It took 2 years for the Zionist military, with the combined might of the West, to reach the doorsteps of Gaza City. 2 years. This is I think, the most magnificent military achievement of the 21st century. That's the least we can say, the 21st century. That such a small group can withstand such power and still stand. And so the United States is running out of air defense systems. It's running out of their GBUs, the bunker busters. It's exhausted. There is open rebellions for the first time since Vietnam within even the American Air Force. Tens of American pilots refusing to carry arms to Israel. Nobody wants to talk about this, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that are actually behind the scene that we haven't felt yet and understood the how far the effect of Gaza has been on the globe. And we're going to, once this ceasefire, if it actually comes into effect, I tell you, I think things are going to accelerate. Instead of thinking that, if this war continues, Israel and the West's power will collapse faster, actually, no. When the ceasefire happens and all the details of what the crimes were committed in Gaza come out in the open, the collapse of the Zionist colony will accelerate from within and without, and with it, the power of the West.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like, and again, I'm just saying, it sounds like, and that's what I'm saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that you seem more optimistic in this sticking this time around.
Yeah, I'm more optimist because, look, the situation here in West Asia, it's clearly not although we've lost Syria, it's clearly not in the favor of the West. And I tell you that we saw all those movements of American air assets over the last 2 weeks into the region. People were thinking there's going to be a war. There's probably still going to be a war in Iran or Yemen or Lebanon, what have you. But can you imagine the added pressure that was going to build up within Western societies if actually the West went to war with Iran, and this time there was Western soldiers, American and British and German, dying, right?
Yeah.
Because a direct war with Iran that the West would take would entail Iran bombing the hell out of Western presence in the region. And so I think sometimes we forget the cumulative effect of things. Even what could look like a cumulative effect of Western military power exhibition over the last 2 years could lead, let's say, to the collapse of another axis of resistance country. There was a race between the military objectives that the Zionists needed to achieve to make any Palestinian liberation movement end, with the realities of change in global consciousness and understanding. And I think we've passed the moment where if the United States decides to go to Iran and start a war right now, that there will be revolutions in Europe in the beginning, but there's probably going to be militias formed in the United States, and things will get out of hand. Right now, we're at that edge of these things, and I think at least Trump thinks that if he can stop the genocide in Gaza, then he may be able to launch a war on Iran as Israel requests without having the cumulative effect of contempt that the populace has against the establishment to merge together with the probably rejection of this war on Iran.
Yeah, it depends if they put troops in. If they put troops in, yeah, I agree with you. I think there will be a huge backlash against the even in strikes. There will be a backlash. Let's get into Qatar for a moment, because I agree with you. That's why I feel uneasy about this. Obviously, I don't have skin in the game. My kids aren't being murdered, right? My wife isn't being murdered. Hamas is on the ground. They are making determinations about what they think is in their best interest at this moment. And in their mind, this is in their best interest. And as you point out, they still exist. The entire point, if Israel had the military capability that they bragged and boasted that they had, Hamas wouldn't exist. It's a country with nuclear weapons, for God's sake. They have all of the money in the world coming from the United States, all of the weapon systems coming from Europe, and Hamas still exists. They remain. And so obviously they weren't able to accomplish the objectives, and they didn't see a way of accomplishing the objectives, in which case you get this deal that has come up with where they've accepted only the first premise of the deal. So no, I totally understand where you're coming from with this. Can we talk about Qatar for a bit? Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, they seem to have played a role in the negotiations. And some people have described this as cashing in on genocide, where in their minds, now that everything is fundamentally destroyed. In fact, before we get to Qatar, where are these people going back to? Like, everything has been destroyed. Like, the hospitals are gone. Like 80, 90% of the buildings are gone. When you make the point of saying where they're going to go back to, where do they go back to in this situation? There's nothing to go back to.
They will go back to their destroyed homes and they'll pitch a tent on top of them. This is the apex of dignity. It's better than being crowded in an open field with thousands of people. And I think every Palestinian would want to go back to their plot of land that they had managed to hold on to 80 years against all odds from people that want to loot and take that piece of land. So no Palestinian will want to stay in a refugee camp. They will go and pitch a tent on top of the ruins of their home as a sign of dignity and defiance. So yeah, they will, in terms of the guarantees that are signed on to this ceasefire, Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar, and the United States. This is going to be another test of their supposed, guarantor status. Are they actually going to be able to stop the slaughter or not? Now, the Palestinians, including the negotiators of Hamas themselves, know that the Egyptians, the Qataris, and the Turks are all vassals that are there to represent pressure points, whether it's by carrot or stick, against the Palestinians to try to get them as far as possible closer to the whims of the Zionists. But I think, an indicator of the failure of these guarantors to force the Palestinians to sign on to a surrender are in front of us. The attempted assassination of the Hamas negotiator team in Doha at the behest of Doha and the US and the Israelis. And the fact that even after that attempted assassination, the pressure that was mounted to accept that 20-somewhat point plan of surrender that Trump and Netanyahu put in front of the whole world in the White House, they couldn't twist the arms of the Palestinian leadership in Gaza to accept those conditions, and we're now seeing a ceasefire that's practically at the terms of Hamas, that Hamas offered October 8th, 2023, a
Yes.
complete exchange of prisoners of war, cessation of hostilities, end of the siege, and entry of materials and food to Gaza. That was the proposal in front of us 2 years ago. That was proposed by Gaza, by Hamas and the resistance.
How does one of the other things that get me is there normality? Like, how do I kept thinking when all of this was going on that there was no way to go back to whatever took place before October 7th, meaning the moment that this genocide took place and the moment that it was clear that they were obviously starving the population. I mean, for God's sake, they raped a man with 60% of the population saying it's perfectly okay to do so, and even going to rescue the soldiers that were temporarily locked up for that rape on camera. Like, this is the society to which they're operating in. And I kept thinking, how does this go back to some level of normality or some level of what it was beforehand? And maybe I'm not asking this question right, but I hope you understand what I'm getting at. That even if this sticks, and even if this sticks for a period of time, I don't get the sense, like, how many children can you murder in a society, and that society goes back to some level of normality, knowing that you've murdered all of these kids, hundreds of thousands of children? Or is this my Western bias that is
no,
just not
look,
famous?
Look, October 7th will be marked, and it is already a marker in human history, as important as the marker of World War II. Okay, it's bigger than any other event that we've had since. And the tectonic shifts and changes that have since October 7th and throughout these 2 years of genocide have happened are irreversible. Okay, nothing is going to be the same. Right now, the countdown to the end of the Zionist colony already started. It started October 7th, but it's going to be clear for everybody that has been too overwhelmed with the news of the battle on the ground to not recognize all these things. Is going to become clearer to us as the loud noises of the bombs and the news of the mass killings start taking less of the space of our minds and our social media, where people are going to be finally addressing these things. So the tectonic changes, you cannot return the continents together to make Pangea. And when it breaks, it breaks. Okay. And the hate that is right now at probably 98% of the global population hates Israel, Zionism, and anyone that defends it. It's like an overwhelming global consciousness, multi-generational. Those surveys done of the German population last week that showed a vast majority of the Germans believe Israel is committing a genocide. This is the most propagated population in all of the West that has been made to have that Holocaust guilt baked into them from birth. Have now reached this point. Okay, the numbers that we saw in the United States, both Republican and Democrat, we have there's an absolute majority of Democrats that think Israel is committing war crimes. Absolute majority, meaning over 75%. When you're talking about majority of Jews who live in the United States, American Jews, another population that has been indoctrinated since childhood in Jewish Zionist schools and Jewish Zionist summer camps and Jewish travels to Israel and all of that, and propaganda from all sides and all. And what happened? Vast majority of Jewish Americans believe Israel is committing war crimes. There's no return from this.
Yeah.
Everything has been revealed in all its naked glory. You know, when people would talk 2 years ago about Zionist control of Western media, you would get like an army of people barking at you, calling you an anti-Semite. Well, today now, openly, Zionists have bought CBS News and TikTok,
Yep.
and are going to put very shitty wise, very unwise, to become the chief propagandist in front of your eyes with the open, outright, goal that is told to everybody that this is going to be a pro-Israel propaganda machine. So there is no return from this. How is the Zionist elite in the US going to restore any of their the confidence and goodwill that may have been there in the population in the United States? Things are beyond. It's going to at least take a whole generation of accumulated propaganda for people that have never seen the Holocaust in Gaza to have been born, who their parents didn't tell them anything about the Holocaust in Gaza, for you to return some beginnings of return of control of mind and the trust of the populations. And I think right now I was just reading, by the way, in the UK, Wes Stirring, the Minister of Health, I think, said he's going to suspend without trial any doctor that criticized Zionism and the genocide in Gaza. If you commit medical fraud, if somebody dies under your hand as a doctor in the United Kingdom, there's a trial for you, and you're not suspended because presumption of innocence, right? So the amounts of rights that the Western elite has already taken from those, theatrical rights that people had, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, all of this.
Yes.
Now we're getting to points of the right to have a job will be taken from you in order to stop this tectonic shift that is happening. And people are just getting angrier and more bold, actually, in their responses to these attempts by their governments. So things are right now, the battle about Israel and Zionism is becoming a domestic issue for British citizens, for American citizens, for French citizens, Italians, Germans. It's not anymore American citizens trying to tell their government, don't use your weapons to kill Palestinians, or don't send money to Israel. Now it's American citizens saying, I want my right to speech, my right to assembly as a citizen, and it's my government that's stopping. You see, so now it became a domestic issue, and there's no. This is another indicator that the collapse is accelerating.
Rebuilding. What is the rebuilding supposed to look like? And do you put stock into this? I mean, obviously, the hostilities would have to stop before any rebuilding takes place. But it seems that Qatar, Saudi Arabia, they're looking to earn money off of this genocide.
I don't think Qatar or Saudi Arabia will make money out of rebuilding. I mean, they're going to have to pay for it because masters. That's how are they? Which money is going to come from where? Are the Americans going to give any international agencies money, or the Europeans? They refuse to give UNRWA money. Okay, so
they're going to make them do it. It's like vassals, go pay.
Yes, vassals, go pay. You've got all those billions parked in my banks. It's okay. You can move some of them. I don't need the interest right now. This is basically the whole Western economy and lives on the interest of the stacked up money of these Gulf monarchs. Okay, so they'll just, they're going to have to pay for it because master says so. But that's a little bit ahead of us, right? Look, if there is a ceasefire, if it actually stands, I think it's going to be closer to what's happening in South Lebanon. Meaning Israel every few days will bomb a target inside Gaza, try to assassinate Hamas or other fighters that humiliated them on the battlefield, but they waited for them till they're off duty and going back and forth trying to build their home or help their family or bring their auntie back to her home or whatever and assassinate them. Okay, and this is not going to be the big names in Hamas because they can't reach them at this point, at least inside. They will be, just like here, targeting just a young man who they've spotted in the battlefield and screwed them in the battlefield because he's a 1,000 times better as a warrior than Israelis, and they waited for him months later to fire at him a missile from a drone while he's driving his motorbike going back to his home. So that's possible. The other thing is that the reconstruction in South Lebanon was not allowed up until now. Okay, every time somebody tries to rebuild, the heavy machinery brought in gets attacked. Yes. The workers that are building gets attacked. Even last week, and we just released a report yesterday on it. 2 architects that are doing surveying the damage. Yeah, civilian architects, just because they want to deter people from rebuilding. So these things, this is how I expect the ceasefire in Gaza in its best conditions to be. I don't expect it to be a total ceasefire.
But that's not a ceasefire. I mean, either it is or it's not. That's not a ceasefire in that case. That's just them murdering random people. And again, at that point, the onus is on the signatories to say, well, wait a minute, you've just murdered these people. This is, what the hell are you doing? But I get the sense from the way that you're explaining it, you have no expectation of anybody pointing out, saying, hey, you just murdered somebody.
Yeah, I don't think so, because look at what happened in Lebanon. And in fact, Thomas Barak, the American envoy to, and he called all the media in Lebanon animalistic. He openly said that no, the U.S. is not a guarantor, and it's not going to guarantee anything, although they signed as a guarantee. So clearly, the United States or Qatar or Turkey or Egypt, in the case of the United States, will not want to stop. And in case of the vessels, they can't do anything. They don't have any power to stop Israel from doing anything. So this is the best case scenario. But I still will take this, because imagine right now people trying to bring aid and or trying to go as doctors or trying to bring media into Gaza. It's been 2 years that that's not happening, and the excuse is that it's an active war zone.
Right.
Well, now international visitors, journalists, aid workers, whatever it is, are going to be able to enter Gaza. Imagine the attempt of Israel to stop these things from happening, how it will have as a reaction. And I think, no matter what they do here, it's a slippery slope for them. They've already admitted that they cannot defeat the resistance in Gaza. As the ceasefire, even in its worst condition in Lebanon, it's an admittance that they couldn't defeat Hezbollah. Mm-hmm. And they didn't enter the land. They couldn't enter it except in ceasefire. And in ceasefire, and now after ceasefire, they're worried because of the buildup. And they thought that even the ceasefire in this situation, look at what they wanted here in Lebanon, so we can kind of compare it to what they're going to try to do in Gaza. And they thought that, okay, now there's a ceasefire, we can create internal propaganda in Lebanon, bring in Mahmoud Abbas style a prime minister like Nawaf Salam, who's a collaborationist, and now we're going to try to crush Hezbollah internally through either a civil war or the military being used against them, and or a revolt by the population. And what ended up happening is that actually all of that failed.
Yeah.
The population is more determined to stand behind the resistance, no matter what their sect is or their political even ideology in Lebanon. The prime minister that the United States brought in is right now the most hated prime minister in the history of Lebanon since the Israeli occupation in 1982. So, even the Sunni population, like, you have to read Sunni Twitter in Lebanon. They're making fun of the guy all the time because he's humiliating them as a population by putting himself into a confrontation with the populace again about projection of the image of Nasrallah on the rock on the shore of Beirut, and/or now attempting to ban the largest cultural institution in the Shia community, the Retaliates community center that produces movies and theater and art and so forth, and has art school and all of these things. So it's there in Gaza, the U.S. and Israel is going to try to bring in Mahmoud Abbas into power, for instance.
Yeah.
They will, this ceasefire is going to bring back the talk about an election that was stopped before in 2022, when the attack on Jerusalem was happening, and there was supposed to be an election, and it was suspended. So an election is going to happen. Now, what is going to happen to the power of Mahmoud Abbas that hasn't been elected in 15 years?
Yeah.
And he's already too old and nobody likes him. It's going to backfire. Or this attempt to take out, during this ceasefire, to destabilize Hamas's support and bring in some collaborators to govern Gaza is going to backfire actually worse than the battle on the ground.
How does this affect the West Bank? I mean, for all intents and purposes, the West Bank was also a battle zone.
Yeah, the West Bank, its situation is really bad. I watched yesterday videos of Israeli colonists going into a small village in the West Bank and, driving over a mother and two children that were stepped out of their home. It's a remote village and a remote home. Watched yesterday another video of Israeli colonists, crashing into people's homes in another village. And when people came out, the Israeli military arrested them all from their own homes.
Yeah.
And of course, the colonists in the West Bank are some of the nastiest human beings on this planet, and they've been armed to the teeth. They're out in a full campaign to ethnically cleanse remote villages and create more colonies. But again, how is this going to be sustainable?
Mm-hmm.
It is not sustainable. Things are, the minute now there is going to be a quieter front in Gaza, there'll be more attention to what's happening in the West Bank. And that's, again, going to add another layer of disdain to Zionism and their institutions and so forth. And I don't think that much of any things that we're talking about right now would have been possible without the sacrifices, both even for the people in the West Bank. They resisted in most of the cities and refugee camps in the West Bank for also a long time. There's now mass destruction in many of the refugee camps in the West Bank, but that shows you that resistance is alive. Yesterday, the Israelis announced that they caught a huge shipment of weapons being smuggled into the West Bank. ATGMs and machine guns and drones and so forth. So the resistance axis is still trying to supply both the resistance in Gaza and the resistance in the West Bank with weapons. So, there could be a trigger of another operation in a different front. Who knows? If the Zionists are crazy and haven't learned from the past 2 years.
Does Hamas, one of the things that was discussed in the deal was that Hamas was going to give up governance and at some point give up weapons. I mean, obviously that's not in this particular deal, but apparently there's negotiations that are still going on or that will continue to go on over the course of, I guess you could say, the implementation of this quote unquote agreement. Do you think it gets to that point? I mean, do you think Hamas gives up political office, or do you think Hamas gives up their weapons? I mean, apparently early on, or in one of the deal formats, they were willing to withdraw from political life. But do you think that comes about or not so much?
Yeah, I mean, I never believed those statements because Hamas didn't make them. It was the negotiators saying that they began agreeing to this or that. There is no way that Hamas and any Palestinian resistance in Gaza will hand over its weapons. Even the Palestinians in the West Bank, when they're being attacked, they're not handing over their weapons. They're just dying with their weapons and trying to take with them a few garbage bags, Zionists.
Yep.
So it's not, there's no way. The history of the Palestinians themselves is ripe with examples of what happens when you lay down your weapons. The freshest of them, of course, is the Sabra and Shatila massacre in 1982, when the Palestinian resistance handed over its weapons to the Americans with American guarantees of President Reagan personally, saying, Arafat and the PLO can get on the boats to Tunis and we'll protect your men, your children, elders, and women that are going to be left behind. And then they were all slaughtered. So, no, this is not going to happen. The Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian people have sacrificed so much to gain their independence and sovereignty. And, you don't sacrifice hundreds of thousands of people as martyrs in this path of liberation only to hand over your guns. No, that's not going to happen.
Do you think that's going to be the sticking point that they use to justify resuming operations?
No. I think if Trump had any doubt in his mind that he could get the Palestinian resistance to hand over its weapons, he wouldn't have signed on to this agreement this morning. So it's clear that the U.S. realized that if they insist on handing over the weapons, or if they insist on that stupidity, which I told everybody was part of the psychological warfare, bringing Tony Blair as the viceroy of Gaza, was not something that was going to happen. It was just part of the psychological warfare of the Zionists and the imperialists, pretending that they can do everything they want to. They can bring a war criminal that the whole world knows is a war criminal and appoint him as the viceroy of Gaza, and nothing you can do about it. That was the intent of that. And the Palestinian leadership and the Palestinian resistance understood that this is all bluster. It's bluffing, and we'll just continue this fight. And that's what they did. And this is what forced Trump to come to realization of reality, that if they don't cease fire right now, they're going to have to continue for another at least 2 years on this same pattern of mass killing, because it took them 2 years to just get to the gates of Gaza City. So it's logical that this war would have dragged on for another 2 years, and much of the West will be, by that point, engulfed in civil wars.
Yeah, or actual wars. I mean, do you think part of the rationale for ending this is so Donald Trump can open operations on other places, either Iran, Yemen, Venezuela, wherever, but that this was a festering wound that he had to deal with, especially with the world opinion so significantly and radically changing on Israel, that I need to settle this before I can go and do this other thing that I'm most likely going to end up doing with Iran? Or do you think these are separate concerns?
Yeah, it's very possible that there will be a war on Iran, Lebanon, or Yemen, or a combination of those three very soon. And at the same time, we see the buildup in Venezuela,
Yes.
in the Caribbean Sea. And I don't know if the United States can fight two wars like that at the same time without proxies, right? Usually the US, at least one of its major wars, if it's fighting two of them, is fought through a proxy. And in this situation for the last, 10, somewhat 15 years, the US has been fighting the war in Ukraine and the whole war in Western Asia through proxies. So we'll see if the US enters these wars directly by itself. I doubt. I don't know if the US really thinks that it can enter Venezuela. I think Venezuela, at least in my mind, from just seeing the videos of it, I wish I can visit. I want to visit Venezuela. It's very similar in terms of Vietnam topography and nature. So it's a jungle war. Can they fight a jungle war right now after fighting for 30 years only desert wars with no natural cover, that you depend so much on air power to target your and direct the movement of your forces? So we'll see what happens there. I have a feeling it's not going to be the priority of the US. It is the priority of the US right now is to shore up its colonies, the Zionist colony, and to fight its most worst foe that it has, which is Iran.
I guess two more questions. One, and there's no way for you to answer this, but if you were, what do you think Hamas at this moment is thinking, and many of the other resistance groups that are there? I was listening to some of the comments that the negotiators were effectively making. What do you think is in their mind? Is this a pullback for further actions later? Is this, okay, we need a breather also before we consider what our next step is for liberation? What do you think they're thinking in this moment?
Well, I think their top priority is the lives of the civilians right now that are probably at the edge. I don't think anyone wanted to, from those who planned October 7th or so on, wanted this mass amount of death and destruction. And the Zionists over the last 2 years wanted to kind of burn into the minds of people that they are the most vicious wild dogs out there. This was the intention. I think we were all already used to in this region to the Zionist viciousness, but this was, I think, 100 times worse than any crimes that the Zionists committed, and most probably the worst crimes that we've seen in the 21st century. Any state
in my lifetime, yeah.
Right. So I think the priority was to cease fire in order to save people's lives, but as we see, that did not affect their position on maintaining the weapons of the resistance and forcing the exit of the occupation forces. So that shows you that, they have to sacrifice for 2 years. They were going to sacrifice till the end of time for maintaining power of resistance. And I think since the West backed down from the requirement to hand over weapons and also agreed to that formula of 20 prisoners of war for 2,000 Palestinian hostages, and this is already a victory that you take, you know.
Yeah, it's 2 years, and this effectively is the same deal that they had early on when this began. If there's an election, does Hamas win that election coming up?
100%. If this election is only about people that are living inside the West Bank and Gaza, and the Palestinians in the diaspora, whether in the countries around Palestine or internationally, are refused the right to vote, because this is what has been part of the Oslo Agreement, is the vast majority of Palestinians, 2/3 of the Palestinians who are outside Palestine don't have the right to vote currently.
Mm-hmm.
But if we think about just people in Gaza and the West Bank, Hamas would win, no matter what opponent is put in front of it in an election. There was a survey done last month about this. The only possibility of somebody winning over Hamas, and just with a small fraction, is that Marwan Barghouti, who is in the dungeons of Israel, who, by the way, Hamas demanded as the top of the list of prisoners to be released, is Marwan Barghouti. Who is Marwan Barghouti, of course, is from Fatah, and the only honorable man in the Fatah leadership left. And Ahmad Saadat, the head of the PFLP, and amongst other leadership of other Palestinian factions. Those were on the top of the list of what Hamas wants to be released. If Marwan Barghouti is released, and if he is still mentally capable, because nobody knows his physical and mental status, since he's been in isolation for years now, and psychological torture and physical torture. I think some of the viewers may have seen that video of Ben Gvir entering the cell of Marwan Barghouti and kind of humiliating him in front of the cameras just a few months ago, last year. So if he's still capable and he runs in an election, Marwan Barghouti, he will win against the candidate of Hamas with a small fraction. But again, that will be different than the seats in the parliament. The parliament will still fall majority to Hamas, if not like a complete majority, because people will be voting for the president separately, and Marwan Barghouti would be, most probably even the candidate that Hamas will back in order to create national healing. So it's very likely that the Israelis will not release him just for that point, because he is actually more dangerous to Mahmoud Abbas and the collaborationist cabal than he is to Hamas.
Explain that. Why?
Because definitely Marwan Barghouti is supporting of armed resistance. This is why he was in jail. He organized much of the military attacks during the second Intifada from the West Bank and Jerusalem under the Fatah banner, under their military wings, and he was basically handed over by Fatah to the Israelis just to take him out of the picture after the death of Arafat. So Mahmoud Abbas sees him as and much of the Fatah population loves Marwan Barghouti. Okay, so it's clear that he would destabilize all the collaborationist class that is now in control of Fatah, and they will be homeless, basically, these collaborators, in terms of not having a political vassal to run their agenda in. So I think, every time that Hamas tried to get Marwan Barghouti out of his jail over the last 15 years, multiple exchanges of prisoners of war that happened over the last 2 decades. Every time Hamas puts him on the top of the list, and every time Mahmoud Abbas tells the Israelis, don't release him. Okay, so that's why.
Effectively, he would bring political change. Yeah, Laith, fantastic breakdown, man. I always appreciate your breakdowns. Thank you for doing this today. When I saw that this deal came out, I wanted to get an experienced person to explain it, explain what it was, explain what it wasn't, and kind of give some kind of context to, because I'm telling you, a lot of people, even on this chat, are thinking to themselves, Trump can't be trusted. But I resist that feeling, because to me, it's like, yeah, but if your kids are getting killed, if your wife is getting killed, if your family members are getting murdered, if you're being starved to death, then you have other responsibilities that you also have to pay attention to in the context of being a resistance group. So no, it's fantastic breakdown. Laith Marouf, thank you for this. I really appreciate it. And just for the audience, just to know, Laith Marouf, he's an award-winning multimedia producer and media policy law consultant. You can check out Laith's videos on Free Palestine TV. That one is on YouTube. I'm sorry, that one is on Twitter. And Free Palestine, that video, that one is on YouTube, both of which can find your content. Is there anywhere else that you may want people to check you out, Laith?
Yeah, I mean, when you go to our website, freepalestine.video, you can find us on all our social media. It's clear. The links to there. We're on Rumble, on X, on Telegram, on YouTube, on Insta, and on others. And we are demonetized on all platforms and 100% dependent on donations from our viewers. We brought hundreds of videos, actually 1,900 reports and videos over the last 2 years from the West Bank and Lebanon. So every dollar that the viewers donate goes very far. It's all in English, the content. Please go to our website, freepalestine.video, donate, subscribe to a monthly donation, and share all the content so we can get far and wide.
Laith Marouf, thank you for this, man. You be safe. Have a good day, okay?
You too, Jamal. See you soon.
Bye-bye. Shout out to Laith. Usually he comes on Friday, but I asked him if he was willing to come on today because, again, all of this is kind of breaking today. Great breakdown by both him and Professor, well, I always call him Professor, but Dr. Wilmer Leon. Both of them have my appreciation for joining me this morning. We're going to have Dane McAdams. Dane McAdams is going to come on at 9:15. So he's going to be on with, give or take, 15 minutes. Let's go to chat real quick. Kevin Wayne, Netanyahu, I like the way that's spelled, and just so people can see it, pays Congress to be his friends. Kevin, you're absolutely correct. That is exactly what he does. And by the way, just for the audience, if you guys enjoyed this content, you find yourself coming back to this content often, please hit that like button. Please share the content. If you can assist in the way that Kevin has assisted, please do so. That is with Patreon, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, Super Chat, Super Stickers. All of those things help contribute to the show. And I also like to hear the comments on those Super Chats and Super Stickers. There's that also. Look, this is not ideological for many of these people who are in Congress. I think I've mentioned this before. If you and I are on the same page, you don't have to give me $100 million. If you're not on the same page, you don't have to give me $7,000 to tweet in your favor. If we are on the same page, you don't have to spend all of this money to buy TikTok or CBS and put Barry Weiss as the editor in order to give some kind of pro-Israel slant to the stuff. I hope you get my point. If people are on the same page, you wouldn't have to invest this much money to compel behavior. And yet, they invest this much money. All of these organizations that are in the United States, the money that they grease politicians' pocket with in Congress, or for that matter, media, they're doing it because people are not on the same page. And it is on some level, fiduciary relationship. You pay me for a very long time. I got your back in regards to various votes and everything else. That is the deal. That is the arrangement. And yes, you do have some Christian Zionists that believe Jesus is going to come back on a horse, bare-chested. Yes, those people are out there, and they are waiting for the day for Jesus. For some reason, I have in my head a staff or something like that he's coming back with. Those people are lunatics. Those people do exist. But if you're spending $100 million to get rid of a candidate, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. We have Jay. Nice shirt, sharp. Thank you, Jay. By the way, I have t-shirts that will be coming out soon. We'll see if you guys like those t-shirts. But let's go to some other stories while we wait on Day and McAdams. So Chicago has been pushing back, and God bless them for doing so. Now, as you know, they've put all of these members of ICE, all of these lunatics, goons that Donald Trump has pulled. Apparently, Donald Trump has won his appeal in order to send military into Portland. And of course, those military are probably also going to be going to Chicago. Chicago had this massive rally recently. Look at this. Take a look at this. This is a population that on some level you expect this to take place. That's in response to what ICE has been doing in Chicago. God bless them for doing so. God bless them for doing so. And look, I will tell you, that reaction is as American as apple pie. Like, meaning the moment that you put that much military force on the ground in the city, you have an expectation that the public is going to have a severe backlash to the fact that you're putting that much military on the ground in that city, especially when they're doing stuff like snatching Americans out of their homes, or beating the hell out of Americans, or shooting Americans, or for that matter, just even the way they're doing immigrants. Cars have been going through Chicago detailing, alerting people when they see ICE moving through the city and moving through the streets. It has brought Chicago together, apparently. And so, of course, Donald Trump is still using this lie that there's Antifa everywhere. And the right, one of the things that the right wing has been doing is trying to absolve themselves of all of their failings. Now, this has been on the issue of January 6th. So they would say, yeah, I know these people were carrying Trump signs, and I know they were screaming, stop the vote. I know all of that was true. And I know they were out there, all these white guys fighting cops. What did Trump say? This is undignified for a white man to be acting in his chest. But in their mind, they're like, that was Antifa. We believe that was Antifa's fault. Or they would say, that's the government's fault. Well, Donald Trump was the president. So, yes, it was Trump's fault. Or they would say, well, the feds did it. The feds moved the thing. And so, all of us went screaming in. What were we supposed to do? Meaning they're trying to find any and everything in their power to come up with excuses to absolve themselves of blame for either the murders that they committed, for either the stuff like in January 6th that they were committed. Understand, you had a bunch of right-wingers in a paramilitary organization waiting in Virginia for some kind of signal that they expected or wanted Donald Trump to give, in which case they would have taken all of their military equipment, all of their weapons and everything else, and moved to quote-unquote stop the vote. This is serious. This is not playing stuff. These people are lunatics. When they're sending military into the streets, what do you think the cultists and the fascists think? They think it's fantastic. They think it's perfectly okay. As opposed to a rational human being that may even be a Republican saying this is too far. Ron Paul, Republican, I would wager to you, he was saying this is too far. The murdering of fishermen or people in Venezuela on boats. Again, that is radically illegal. There is no legal justification for that. Nobody says anything, with the exception of one or two people that says that is well beyond the pale of responsibilities and the capabilities of the president. Cultists, fascists, think it's perfectly okay. Trying to make this distinction between people who are Americans and who say this is too far because they care about the country and the integrity of the country beyond the individual political dynamics of their political party, of their political ideology and their identity. There are many people in this country that don't care about the country. They care about their political ambitions. They care about having their leader in charge and following their leader in this case, as opposed to what is legal, what is not legal, what is beyond the pale of the president with regards to what the president is doing and where it is legal. I know Laith makes this argument that this country is headed for civil war. I think it's headed for something. I don't know if it's civil war, but it's something that this country is headed for. And you can see it when you're putting all of these military on the street. Why does the president do that? Why does the president need to make up this myth of Antifa? And even going with this idea that there's going to be all of these political investigations and everything else. If indeed there's not some playbook being run, you put military. Why do we have military bases around here? We want chips on the board. We want pieces on the board. I need my queen, my bishop, my knight. I need these things active. Because when anything pops off, I need those things to be moved into a position that is in my best interest. That is no different than what is taking place with the military or goons from DHS that he's effectively moving around the United States and getting the country familiar with the fact that there's military moving throughout the United States, especially in the positions and the places that he's putting these personnel. It's not a quirk. It's not random. I'm saying that this should create a lot more cause of concern in what it seems to be created. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But I don't think I am. I don't think I am. Somebody says sound check. Mic check. What's wrong with the mic? What's wrong with the mic? Volume is fine. What's wrong with the sound? Mic check. 1, 2, 1, 3. What's going on? The sound is sounds like a goldfish. Whoa, we gotta fix that. Hold on. Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna flip to a clip, and then I'm gonna try to fix the sound while I flip to this. This is okay. Donald Trump talking about Portland, and I will be right back.
The amazing thing is you look at Portland, you see fights and, I mean, just violence. It's just so crazy. And then you talk to the governor and she acts like everything is totally normal. There's nothing wrong. It's almost like, are you waking up from a dream or something? You see it on your network. You see it all over the place. And it's so bad. It's so crazy. It's like the movies you see for the kids, I guess not only the kids, adults also, where you have these bombed out cities and these bombed out people. It's like worse than that. I don't think they could make a movie as bad. And then the amazing thing is you look at Portland and you see fires all over the place. You see fights and, I mean, just violence. It's just so crazy. And then you talk to the governor and she acts like everything is totally normal. There's nothing wrong. It's almost like, are you waking up from a dream or something? You see it on your network. You see it all over the place. And it's so bad. It's so crazy. It's like the movies you see for the kids, I guess not only the kids, adults also, where you have these bombed out cities and these bombed out people. It's like worse than that. I don't think they could make a movie as bad. And then the amazing thing is you look at Portland.
That is amazing. That is amazing. That is a man who just looks at the world and just makes it up. He just makes it up. You have police for a reason. You have police for a reason. This country has had crime for the entirety of the country. And now Trump is trying to make this argument that either A, Antifa is a problem, and so we need to somehow go after an organization that doesn't exist. 2, cities around the United States are have, let's say, issues associated with crime and whatnot, despite the fact that there are other cities that have more crime than the cities that he's sending these people to. DC was one of those cities, by the way. And in DC, he didn't even send them to the crime-ridden areas. I lived in DC for 5 years. So I'm perfectly aware of the various areas of DC that are heavy in regards to crime, homelessness, et cetera, et cetera. Donald Trump sent them to like Georgetown. They're like picking up trash in Georgetown. Georgetown is the ritzy area of DC. That's the area with the stores and et cetera. That is not the rough area of DC. That is not Anacostia. That is not, some of these other rougher neighborhoods. So I hope you get my point. He's making that up. And you have to ask, why is he making that up? Charlie Kirk, Steph, same thing, right? Charlie Kirk gets killed. Immediately, it flips over into, we are standing arm in arm with Charlie Kirk. Left-wingers are whack jobs. And because left-wingers are whack jobs, we believe that this has something to do with Antifa, meaning all of these things were moving in a particular direction, despite the fact that the two things didn't connect at all. You have right-wingers who kill people far more than left-wingers. I don't even know the political ideology of the guy that did the killing. Frankly, the letters and everything else that the FBI was putting out was rubbish, right? That being said, they used that immediately to flip into this narrative in order to justify nonsense. President that is a habitual liar lies. My issue, and the thing that I'm pointing out, is that putting all of these DHS goons on the various parts across the United States to go into various neighborhoods, A, is going to have a backlash, as you're seeing in Chicago, as it should have a backlash. B, you have to wonder and ask the question, why is the president doing it? What is the main objective? What is the overall objective? Is this a playbook that is being run? And I'm of mind to say it is. I think it is. If this is in the very beginning, if this is meaning this is in the first year, what does year 2 look like? What does year 3 look like? What does year 4 look like? We are a frog boiling. And right now, people haven't necessarily responded strongly to it, with the exception of the people who are in Chicago, or for that matter, the people who are in Portland. But as it becomes clear what this agenda is, people will respond. And maybe he wants the backlash. Maybe he wants that fight, or that political fight, so he can create more justification in his mind of political repression. I don't know, maybe it's like Venezuela, where you put military out and you want a response from Maduro so you can justify a larger, more response. I don't know, but clearly there's something being planned with this. This is not random. This is not just Trump out of the blue doing this. This is a playbook being run on the American public. Let me go to my guests. I see him here. I am joined with the man himself, Daniel McAdams. How you doing, Daniel? You doing okay today?
Hey, Jamal, how you doing? Great to see you again.
It is good to see you, man. I hadn't talked to you in a while, and I wanted to check up on you. Daniel McAdams, he is Executive Director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. You can learn more about Daniel's work at Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity by going to ronpaulinstitute.org. Daniel, you are the person I wanted to talk to, because I'm very curious about what's going on. Let's say, what is in your mind of Trump sending military? Apparently, the appeals court has ruled that Donald Trump does have the power to randomly send military from one city or from one state to another state, even though there's nothing going in that state that will require the National Guard. Give me your thoughts on this. I'm very curious on where you sit in the political aisle, well, let's say the political spectrum. How do you view this?
Well, you make a great point, which is that there is no insurrection anywhere in the country. There's no, the original intent of the National Guard, which became renamed in the early part of the 20th century, late 19th, early 20th century, was to quell any insurrections. You know, that was what the framers had in mind. There was never the idea that there would be a standing army that the president has exclusive use of to use against American citizens. That would be anathema to people like Patrick Henry, who helped, craft and frame what our country's all about. It's just never part of their thinking.
Are you surprised that there's been no pushback to this? I mean, the people in Chicago, obviously, they feel some kind of way about it, because this is this kind of proto-fascism stuff where you're effectively using the military for your own ends as a president to go after what you consider to be political hotspots in the country. But no response from people who, usually decry this idea of government overreach. Oh my God, the federal government is going after people. Or, oh my God, Joe Biden is using the federal apparatus to go after his political opposition. None of these people have said a word. They've just let the president do what the president is doing.
Well, Jamal, these are the bad guys. They deserve it, right? That's the way of thinking. I mean, it's unbelievably juvenile, infantile thinking that, yeah, we're going to finally get them. And it's very difficult for those of us who are not in support of the riots that happened in 2020, for example, who do not adhere to the Antifa worldview, who do not like the cities to be in turmoil and chaos. We're
Right.
between a rock and a hard place, because it's like, on the one hand, yeah, there has to be something done. You can't just let these people run roughshod and destroy people's lives and businesses. But on the other hand, you can't use an atom bomb to kill a cockroach, right? I mean, but we get hit with. I mean, if you go on social media and you say anything like that, all the Trump people are screaming, you are just nothing. You're a liberal. You're nobody, and it's really, really dangerous. They're empowering something. And you try to convince them. Listen, guys, there's going to be someone coming into power next. It may not be the next president, but it'll be one down the road. This dystopia that you're creating here, you think they're not going to unleash it on you times 1,000? Are you
Yes.
people stupid? The answer, I hate to say it, yes.
See, I always think those people are either fascists or cultists. And the reason why I use those terms almost literally. There are some people like you who would look at this and say, America matters more. Like, I mean, regardless of what my political ambitions are, the country has a rule of law that matters more, and that there are going to be political consequences for us doing what we're doing here and supporting this. Because the next guy that comes in, I mean, this is the whole Joe Biden issue, right? Joe Biden spends all of this time trying to go after Trump, trying to put him in a cage in order to prevent him from running again. And then Trump gets in office and effectively uses the political apparatus and takes it to either a higher degree in the way that it is being used by going so far as to put military in American cities. They don't seem to make the connection, unless in their minds, where Trump is just going to be king from here on out. Otherwise, I don't know how they're missing that this can flip, and this can flip in the other direction.
And it will, but it'll get worse each time it flips, because the one side is more PO'd. The Trump people are rightly angry at what was done to Trump. All this
Yes.
lawfare against him, they're rightly angry, righteously angry. I wanted Trump to win because I thought it would be a triumph against this kind of use of lawfare. Little did I know that because the genie was let out of the bottle, it was going to take some steroids and get 1,000,000 times worse. There's no rational thinking on this. I heard a little bit of your previous segment, just like there's no rational thinking on this unbelievably evil idea that you just shoot boats out of the water without having any idea who's in them. I mean, and if you challenge that, I mean, Senator Paul challenged that yesterday. And if you go onto the X thread where he challenged it, I mean, it was vile.
Really?
What the hell is wrong with this country? What is going on here?
How do they think that and you know what makes it even worse? The Senate put a bill up, and the Senate rejects a measure to stop Trump from unilaterally striking Venezuelan boats. 48-51. This was effectively, the Senate comes out and says, hey, maybe the president shouldn't be allowed to just randomly murder people and just to come up with some kind of rationale to do it. The Senate is like, no, he should be able to do that. That's perfectly okay. We're fine with the president doing that. That's astonishing. That is astonishing. For one, I'm almost shocked that they even brought this up for a vote.
On this vote,
Yeah, I mean,
No, go ahead. I'm speechless on this, that they think this is okay.
They're enablers. They're enablers of this. And, Congress at the least should demand a plan, some oversight, what's going on. Again, I mean, just going back to the framers of our Constitution, they never had the idea that the United States military was a personal toy in the hands of the President of the United States. He is the commander-in-chief only when the U.S. Congress declares war. And Congress has just abrogated that responsibility. I mean, it makes those of us who don't like what we're seeing, almost wish for a split government, where you have Democrat controlled at least House or Senate, someone to put the brakes on, even if, again, if it's probably going to be for all the wrong reasons, because it's just about pure power, just raw exercise of raw power.
Well, to make your blood boil even further, obviously when Donald Trump gave that deranged speech with Hegseth, where he told the military personnel, some of you are going to be going to the various cities across the United States. Okay, that's pretty outrageous. They've been asking and playing around with this idea of getting rid of the invoking the Insurrection Act. And again, as I keep telling the public, there is nothing there. He's just making this up as he's going along. Antifa is a problem. These left-wingers who are going after whoever is a problem. Portland is an issue. Chicago is an issue. So yeah, I'm going to bring in the feds. So I'm going to use DHS in order to go after all of these people because the government in those cities is not necessarily doing their job. Despite, as I keep pointing out, there's higher crime in other parts of the country than the areas that Donald Trump is effectively focusing on. It's gotten so bad that they're even asking him stuff like this. I mean, think of what would have to take place for somebody to ask the president this question.
I also have 2 questions for you, if I may. Have you given any more thought to possibly suspending habeas corpus to not only deal with these insurrectionists across the nation, but also to continue rapidly deporting illegal aliens?
Yeah, it's suspending who?
Habeas corpus. So.
Oh, I don't know. I'd rather leave that to Christy. What do you think?
No, sir, I haven't been a part of any discussions on that.
Notice the language. These insurrectionists, these, the language is being used as a gateway of saying, well, maybe you should invoke the Insurrection Act. And even the idea that you're asking him, hey, maybe you need to get rid of habeas corpus. I don't think people are getting how dangerous this is. Do you think this is a playbook? Meaning, do you think that this is some plan that Trump is enacting where either he is trying to create some kind of proto-fascist state where there's military in various parts of the United States. And so at some point in a plan where he knows there's going to be a backlash, that military or these elements of DHS will already be on the ground? Or do you think this is more haphazard? Because this doesn't seem haphazard to me. This seems like they are running with a very specific language that they're trying to create a justification to invoke Insurrection Act. And this guy's even talking about removing habeas corpus. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer the word authoritarian, but, that's just one's personal preference. I fascism is corporatism, but
fair enough.
But nevertheless, the one thing that struck me about that exchange that you just put on, Jamarl, is that President Trump didn't seem to know what the hell the guy was talking about.
Right, he didn't know what it was.
And maybe his hearing is going. It happens when you get older, and he doesn't want to wear a hearing aid. That's understandable. But when he was asked that, he said, "What was that?" And he told him again, and he said, "I'm just going to defer to Christie on that." I just get the sense that he didn't know what that meant, and that speaks to something else, because you're asking if there's a grand Trump plan. I'm starting to wonder. I've started to wonder for a while now, something like what Seymour Hersh wrote a couple of days ago, that the president is kind of losing his grip on reality. And we're seeing speech after speech. He's basically saying the exact same things. And people are saying this too. In his first term, he would play off people. He would mix it up, and now he just goes and he sort of sits there. This war would have never happened if I was president. And the same rehearsed, tired lines, and he even used it on the generals last week, was it, or earlier this week? So I don't know. We lived through 4 years of Joe Biden in this situation. We know that he was being handled by very ambitious people who were pulling the rug over their boss. I'm starting to wonder if people like Stephen Miller and others like that who are extremely ambitious. Now, Miller, if you see some of the stuff that he says, if you hear some of his speeches, this guy is inflamed.
Yes.
Let's put it that way. This guy, you look up authoritarian in a dictionary, and this guy's face pops up. So I wonder if they're running circles around Trump. We know he's not very curious. We know he's not into details. We know he's a showman. So someone like a Stephen Miller could run roughshod over him. Stephen Miller, his son-in-law Kushner, all these guys. I don't know, it's speculation, but I'm being more and more convinced that there's something to this supposition.
But they have been blowing off habeas corpus. I mean, when they're sending ICE agents out to these various locations, they're wearing masks. They're not having identification on themselves. They're snatching people out of their homes. I mean, when they rappelled down with Black Hawk helicopters, they were kicking in doors. They were snatching Americans out and holding them in the back of vans. And it's like, all right, building's clear. You guys can leave now. Okay, A, they don't even know who you are. B, you're not even necessarily identifying yourself. You're just kicking in doors. See, these people, Americans, and they have a right to effectively be within their homes and have a warrant or something for you to snatch them out of their home. None of that stuff has been mattering to these agents in the way that they've been operating. For all intents and purposes, they have removed habeas corpus in the way that they're operating. But correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Well, back when they wanted to create the Department of Homeland Security, Ron Paul said, "No way. They said, oh, Ron, it's about terrorists. What's wrong with you? Don't you remember 9/11? It's only about terrorists." And you can go back and look at the speeches. He said, this force that you unleash is going to be used against Americans, not against a bunch of foreigner terrorists. That's exactly what's come to be now. It's become the exact kind of Gestapo that Ron Paul warned about back in the early 2000s, and nobody wanted to listen. So here we go. I mean, we sowed the wind, we're reaping the whirlwind.
What is Ron Paul thinking right now? Especially, as you point out, Ron Paul was right. That whatever you're going to call it in the beginning, it will invariably get back to us. He was dead on. Like Barbara Lee. When Barbara Lee, I remember when the Iraq War took place. It was one of my first memories in politics. And Barbara Lee gets up there, she gives that speech with all this immense pressure on her. And she's like, we are going to regret this. Now, everybody else was going to hope. They was like, yeah, let's go kill somebody. And she was like, we're going to regret this. This is a horrible idea, etc. And she ended up being right. It's like the single lone voice. And I get the sense that Ron Paul was the same way. Everybody else was gung-ho. Hey, let's go after the terrorists. Let's create this organization. We got hit on 9/11. And if you watch Tucker Carlson's documentary, that is worrying, to put it mildly, because it means that the CIA knew exactly what was taking place, that they royally screwed up, didn't give the FBI any kind of warning of what was taking, meaning what they used as a pretext for war was a failing of the United States. And Homeland Security was one of those organizations that sprung out of that organization that is now being used to go after Americans. I find this to be outrageous. I find all of it to be outrageous. And there's no pushback to this. None.
No, it's like Professor Higgs when he, in his book, Crisis in Leviathan, every time there's a crisis, the government uses it as an opportunity to grab more power. And that's what happened. I mean, we have Homeland Security. We have all sorts of things that were created. We created the Department of National Intelligence, the DNI, because the CIA wasn't doing its job. So let's get a bigger one that's even more encompassing. This is what they do. It never ratchets back down. It only ratchets up. More and more government, more and more surveillance on American citizens. And it's very dangerous. 9/11. I haven't watched Tucker's documentary. I'm going to try to do that. It's just hard to sit still for a long time. Yeah, I really like to, but it certainly was a gift. It's a gift to the authoritarian state, whoever was responsible for it.
Oh, I'm not applying. I can't get over the hurdle of thinking that the U.S. government did this. That's too big of a hurdle for me. I know some people make that hurdle.
Rogue elements, maybe. I don't know, but I mean, I'm certainly willing to. I mean, I was on the dark side. I would be willing to understand that there would be rogue elements who would let something like this happen at the very least. Who knows?
Yeah,
we'll know. Maybe our grandchildren will know. We probably won't know.
Building 7 is weird to me. Nobody has ever given me a good explanation for Building 7. The way Tucker explains it, just as a nutshell, is that the CIA was trying to find an asset in Al Qaeda, and their thought was, okay, well, we'll track these people who are going all over the world. And at some point, they found that the guy had a passport for the United States. So their thought was, well, when he gets into the U.S., we'll convert him. We'll try to get him to come over to our outside, and he'll be an asset for it. When they was like, well, hey, this guy's obviously a terrorist. There's obviously been warnings that something big is taking place. And the CIA is effectively like, nah, we won't alert their FBI. We'll just follow the guy. And effectively, they lost track of him on some level. Finally, they alert the FBI. But the president is being warned for months. Something big is happening. Something really, really big is going to happen. Something super big is happening. The red lights are blinking, etc. They're getting warning after warning after warning. And finally, at the last minute, they get a warning about Al-Qaeda. And I forget who told them this, but it was like, will you please stop telling me about the damn Al-Qaeda? And a couple of days later, we get hit on 9/11. And so Tucker seems to be making the argument that somebody knew because somebody was betting against airlines, which is a clear indication that somebody knew and was betting against the specific airlines that were used. And B, the CIA royally messed up. And in messing up, immediately went into a cover-up mode where they can blame, well, it was the Saudis, it was this person, it was that person, it was Al-Qaeda, it was everybody else. In which case, all of the stuff gets muddled. And then you have an investigation that really is not an investigation because everything in their power was done to prevent a real investigation from taking place. Oh, it is angering. It is very it is mind-blowing.
Like, sounds like the Charlie Kirk shooting, right? You never have a real investigation. Who was behind it?
Well, there's supposed to be a trial. That's supposed to be an investigation, right? Yeah. Supposed to be. Where do you think this is going? I look at this and I am deeply concerned because my concern goes into a fracturing of America itself. And some people may think it's hyperbolic, but I look at not just this, I look at the other stuff. Like, we are talking in the moment where the government is shut down. There are air flight controllers that just didn't show up to work, where the flight delays as a result of not having air flight controllers that are at the airports. Like, these are very basic things for a government to be able to do. The government and the political branch seems to be completely incapable of just doing basic things. And you have, I don't know if you've read this book, End Times, by Peter Turchin. He talks about this kind of overproduction of elites, where your society gets so ossified that the ability to be able to do basic things for the population that is immiserated and is in bad shape, that requires the government to work, it just doesn't work. And over, let's say, 200-300 year periods, you get governments that fall into revolutions, that comes into these kind of changes, because that's usually the horizon and the time frame where these revolutions take place unless something is done politically. And he talks about FDR, where FDR passed the New Deal, which was kind of a reset of sorts. I don't see a reset. I don't see a political branch that works. And what I do see is a political branch that is now overwhelmingly abusing presidential authority. Where do you think this is going? And am I being too cynical about this in the way that I look at this, where it's like a fracturing of America? Those people are going to respond. Like, when they're putting military in the cities, the city is not just going to say, oh, well, he puts military here. There's going to be a backlash as a result of it. And maybe he wants the backlash. But where do you think this goes?
The real issue is that the R's and D's are not really divided by any sort of ideological issue. They're both in love with power. That's the only thing they care about. So there's no room for more rational voices. Look what happens to a Thomas Massey, who just says we shouldn't be sending all this foreign aid. Congress needs to pass the appropriations bills like that was designed. He's anathema. He's just a sane voice saying we have to do these things the right way. And he's anathema. The government shouldn't be shut down. Speaker Johnson is too busy passing 850 We Love Israel bills to actually just sit down and do the appropriations bills. Pass the appropriations, fund the government for the next year, and then you can move on and rename your post offices and whatever the hell you want to do. He won't do that. He can't do that. It's a non-functioning government, and it was the same under Pelosi as well. They're incapable of functioning. They can't.
Do you think they just don't care? I mean, like, this is one of those things where, somebody will have to be behind the scenes and see how this stuff works. But if you were, let's say, in Congress, let's say 20 years ago versus now, is there a difference in the way that these people think and the way that they operate?
Well, we were in there 20 years ago, so I can actually speak from experience. And it wasn't perfect back then, but we did pass appropriations bills. We did have open debate on the floor. Individual members did have the ability, with certain rules, to introduce amendments to appropriations bills and thereby have speaking slots on the floor and make things known. They had the ability to make coalitions, and that's, you mentioned Barbara Lee. That's one of the things that Dr. Paul and a few others did. They built these coalitions of progressives and conservatives and libertarians, and they would all go down to the floor and get 20 minutes or get 30 minutes, and they would all talk about a bill. That doesn't exist anymore as far as I can see. That's completely gone. So even just in this 20 years since we've been in the House, there's been a huge change. There would never be the kind of foul language. And if you look when
Yes,
one of the
yes.
members or senators questions someone, they're extremely rude. You would never see that. Now there was some of that, but not like it is today. All of these gotcha questions. You know, you look at Pam Bondi down there. Everything is a gotcha question, and so it really. I mean, I'm going to tell you, Jamal. It's almost like a cliche or a meme, but idiocracy is definitely reality. I think when it comes
What
to our
changed?
house.
Like, that's the part that blows my mind. Like, what changed? Like, oh, Daniel Lazar talks about how the political system is ossified and that there needs to be a revolution. Like, he goes further to the left in this case. Like, there needs to be a change. There needs to be a revolution. Love Dan. Dan Lazar is a fantastic guest. The man is brilliant, but he freaks me out with the stuff because I don't trust the people who would be at the helm of that in the various states, right? And the moment that you open that box, you open that box. Like, you don't know what comes out that box, right? And so it's like, do you love the devil that you got, or do you love the unknown? And some people, I'm getting to the point of saying the unknown is a better option, which is terrifying when I think about it, because there does need something needs to change, and this doesn't work. What happened? That's the part that I'm confused by. It's not like the Constitution has changed over the course of all of this time. That's Daniel's argument. You have a 200 or something year old document. It needs to be updated to our current reality. But it worked at one point. And it seems like it's the people that have changed, not the document per se. It's the way that people engage with each other. This is not my right honorable gentleman. This is an enemy. And even if you're like Tipper and Reagan, okay, they may have said bad things about each other, but they still could come together to work in a way that didn't seem to be, like you'll stab them in a phone booth if you got the opportunity to do so. Something seems to have just fundamentally changed in the way that these guys act. And I don't know what it is.
Well, the stakes are too high and they're too concentrated in Washington, D.C. I mean, I think if we readopted the principle of subsidiarity, where the government closest to you is the one that should be the first line, rather than everything to D.C., because what you see is people that run D.C. are people that make billions of dollars off the backs of the American worker and the American middle class, because starting wars that are never meant to be won but meant to be continuous is enormously profitable. And you literally suck the blood out of the American working man and woman to fuel this like fever dream of great riches. So until we can reduce the power of the federal government over us and devolve that power back down to the states, to the localities, to your city council, there's no escaping it. We can't stop these people. They can't be stopped.
But wasn't that true 20 years ago? Or it wasn't true 20 years ago? Or they just got better crooks. They just got to be better crooks.
Yeah, not to the degree that it is now, I think. And, I think that's just, the stakes are higher and higher now. There's more money involved, and they're going in there to grab it, and we're not sending our best, right?
Mm. Well, Daniel, somebody asked me to ask, how do we protect ourselves from this? Especially if this is going as dark as I think it's going.
I definitely would not be in any of these big cities. That's for sure.
What is it? Move to the mountains.
Move to the mountains.
You got to move off the grid.
Become a hermit. There are. I mean, there's nothing you can do. I mean, I would say there are amendments that you could exercise your right to, but even that would not be helpful, I don't think, when you have Black Hawk helicopters showing up with people busting down your doors. It's a dark time. That's all I can say, Jamal. It's a very dark and dangerous time.
It sounds like this is a movement issue, not an individual issue. Like, this is a public saying no and putting their bodies on the line and saying no.
Yeah. Who knows? Everyone has to do it their own way.
Daniel, thank you for this. Honestly, I really do appreciate your point of view. And Ron Paul was right. I mean, people, like, I think the sad part and the flaw, they always said the youth is wasted on the young. And as I get older, I'm realizing that's so true. Because you're presented with things. And as you're presented with things, you can't see the consequences of those things in your 20s or even sometimes in your 30s. And Ron Paul, who probably was in his 50s.
Yeah.
You can't see it.
Yeah.
He saw it. He saw it. Daniel, you have a fantastic rest of your day, man. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. Daniel McAdams.
You too, my friend.
He is director of Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. You can learn more about Daniel's work by going to ronpaulinstitute.org. Daniel, always enjoy talking to you, man. Thank you for this. You be safe, okay?
Thanks so much, my friend. Take care.
Bye-bye. All right. We have come to the end. And yes, the youth is wasted on the young. I feel old when I say that, but 48, damn it, I can say it. I mean, I've gotten to the point when people in their 20s are calling kids. So, that's me, right? If you're in your 20s, if you don't pay attention to politics, maybe you're in your 30s, you just got hit on 9/11. And the narrative immediately switches to, we now need to go murder a lot of people. And you get people all over very angry and very upset. How dare they besmirch the dignity of America by attacking us? Now, do they show bin Laden's memo or writings? No, they do not. So you don't get the understanding of why he did what he did. Instead, what you get is they hate us for our freedom. That's why they hate us. We're shining city on the hill. We're free, and they hate us for that. And so now we need to go murder a lot of people. You don't get the heads up that, well, hey, we're paying kill squads in South America. You don't get the heads up that, well, we were in the Middle East causing all sorts of terror and killings and everything else. You don't get that. That part is, you don't see that part. What you see is the president coming out, they hate us for freedom. And you get the media coming out saying, who are we going to kill? That's what you get. You have a propagandized system, deeply so. Then they say, hey, we have an idea. We need to create an organization that merges all of the other organizations because we got hit on 9/11 because these organizations weren't talking to each other. Now, you never even had a real 9/11 investigation to figure out why you were hit, how you were hit, let alone coming up with a justification to create a new organization. How do you create a new organization if you don't even know the basics of what happened? But whatever, right? If you're in your 20s and 30s, maybe even in your 40s, you sit there and listen to it and say, hey, that's not a bad idea. Now, Ron Paul gets up and says, well, this is horrible. This is going to be used on Americans. And you say, why is that guy always, talking about this stuff? I mean, obviously we were hit. So obviously we need to do something in order to bring the organizations together so don't get hit again. Effectively using fear as leverage to shut down actual rational thinking. And if you don't really have context, you may look at that situation and say to yourself, maybe it's a good idea. As opposed to, this is a government reaching for more power, and that power inevitably is going to be used against us. We have reached that day. We've reached that day. This is the power of the state being used against Americans. And again, this is a dark place. This is authoritarianism in the most naked sense of the term. And yes, of course, it could be worse. I don't want to sound like the Marquis in Star Trek, where they're so unaccustomed to various things that even living in a life of luxury, they still believe that, oh my God, we're under the boot of something. No, this is in real terms. The president of the United States is breaching his authority and is using lies as a way to do that. And this is kind of like when George Bush would say something like, this is enhanced interrogation, when obviously it was torture. Or they hate us for our freedoms, when obviously bin Laden had a letter that fully explained that it was the United States killing and murder, etc., in the Middle East, an invasion of the Middle East that caused this response. It wasn't just random. It wasn't just out the blue. I'm trying to point out, I guess in real terms, the problems associated with the president that is willing to just make shit up and then use the shit that he made up with the other fascists around him that are perfectly willing to people have this belief that fascism has to do with corporations. Daniel McAdams said as much. Mussolini did not say the quote that a lot of people attribute to him, that fascism is the merger of corporations and state. He didn't say that. He said something similar to it that is being mistaken as that. What Mussolini was referring to is effectively there's nothing outside of the state. Totalitarianism, that any and everything is taking place within the context of the state, where the state has a certain amount of control over those things. When I'm using fascism, I'm talking about this in a literal sense. I'm saying that people who don't care about the rule of law, don't care about habeas corpus, is perfectly willing for the president to just make up anything that calls for an insurrection act because they back that president and believe that they are going to be on the better end of that stick that the president is using to go after various, let's say, enemies, quote unquote, in the society that they define to be enemies or terrorists or Antifa or whatever buzzword that they want to use for it as they go about doing it. I'm saying this is remarkably dangerous. This country is going to end up being something else. There will be backlashes. There will be states or cities that just say no. If Donald Trump would have stolen the election back in 2022, 2021, what do you think California would have done? What do you think Washington State would have done? Do you really believe that those states would have acquiesced to this? Some might have, but some might have said, we're out. We're not accepting this. In which case you get something that looks like Ukraine, where you get a fracture in the society because of the overthrow of the government that's taking place when the legitimacy of the government is now called into question. People think that this government, because it's been stable for hundreds of years, that it is a fixture, that it is something that seems to be transcendent, it seems to be unshakable. Your government is a legal fiction that is purely determined by your belief in that thing. That's it. There's no magic to it. It is purely belief. And if the credibility of that government fails to enough people, then you will get a civil war when those people stop responding and stop dealing with the government, because they lose all credibility in that government. Meaning the moment that you get a large enough sum of people who say, we're out, we don't accept this, this is unacceptable, this is breaching the laws in a way where if they don't care about the law, why should I care about the law? When you get enough people, especially if you get a split in military and police forces, it will be a bad day. If you're putting military on US soil, and many of those military people are told, we need you to now murder Americans, or shoot Americans, or do whatever to Americans, and you get a split in the military where some say, we're not doing that, or various police forces who are very militarized themselves says, we're not doing that, you will get a split and a breakdown in your society. I'm trying to point out to you that the law is not a magical thing. The law is not something that's real. None of these things are real. States aren't real. All of these things are cognitive belief sets. And that cognitive belief set, while it might be something that is in people's minds and has been there for the entirety of their life, if you break it, you cannot put Humpty Dumpty back together again. You have been warned. None of this stuff is real. None of it's real. Frank Friel. Trump would rather send soldiers into cities than actually do something about poverty because they don't care. That's the other issue, right? You have an immiseration of the working class. You have people who are dirt poor. A country where people die like 5 years younger than their European counterparts. And you cut Medicaid by nearly $1 trillion. Think about that. Like I'm telling you, healthcare in the United States is, when I travel, it's complicated. I'm in Indonesia right now. I'll be leaving Indonesia within a month. It's never easy. The reason it's never easy, because wherever I go, I also have to pay for treatments in any location that I go to. So it's not just, I can go to this location, live in this location because I run a web channel. Nope, doesn't work that way. I need to nail down the clinic. I need to be able to get treatments at that clinic. I need to make sure that I can afford that clinic, especially because rent and clinic are basically one expense because I have to pay out of pocket. And I will tell you, even in doing that, it is cheaper than the United States. Meaning, even with insurance in the United States, the amount that you have to pay for that insurance, the amount that you have to cover for all of those things, it is still less expensive depending upon where you are being in the US, and that is paying literally for treatments multiple times a week. It's complicated. You have to nail down a clinic in order to do it. But I'm trying to point out that depending upon where you are, it's cheaper. To get, let's say, dialysis in Indonesia is about $80, depending upon where you go. To get it in Nepal is about $80. To get it in Vietnam, if you go to a public hospital, it's about 70 something, $80. If you're in Europe, for example, if you're in Romania, it's about 146. If you're in Poland, I think it's about 150. If you're in Hungary, it's about 156. Yes, I know these prices all around the world because I've been to these places. I'm trying to point out, though, that the expense per treatment in comparison to what it is in the United States is dramatically higher in the US. It's so dramatically higher that if you went to a clinic in the US and you asked them how much would it cost, they would have no idea to even give you a number on what that cost would be. Because typically they give that stuff to insurance, and not just insurance. It is so expensive in the United States that after a period of time, your insurance only pays a portion of it. The government pays the other portion because it's that expensive in the United States. Your insurance company would bitch bloody murder if your insurance company had to cover your treatments. So after a certain amount of time, the expectation is for you to have Medicare, and Medicare will pay 80% of it. Your insurance company will pay the other 80%. I'm trying to point out to you of how expensive treatment costs in healthcare is in the US in comparison to some of the other countries. And to make it even worse, I told the story before about being in a clinic in Egypt, and I'm sitting there smoking, and yes, Egypt, there's a lot of smokers in Egypt, and yes, even in the clinic we were smoking. And the guy ends up being German, and he turns to me and says, "Hey, how much are you paying for this?" And he points out that his government is paying for his treatments. So even with him going from one place to the next for business trips and everything else, his government will pay for it. We have no concept of that in the US. And you would get some weirdos who would be screaming out, why should the government have to do so-and-so? A government is put together to do whatever the citizenry of the government requires it to do. There's no magic to it. There's no document that has come from God, or God came in riding on a bear, again, bare-chested, holding a document of a constitution that didn't exist. Governments only need to be self-sufficient. And what I mean by self-sufficient, they need to be able to propagate themselves over the course of time in a way that's consistent, in a way that's stable and flexible enough to change according to the environmental circumstances. It's not magic. You have belief, and you have to make a choice in regards to the society, in regards to what the government needs to do and what the government needs to accomplish. That's it. Calling it what's the word they use for it? An entitlement. Okay, so what? People can make a decision on what they believe the government needs to require or pay for. And the idea that you're paying such an exorbitant amount for various things, even to the point where people are dying younger, and even to the point where the government is shut down because millions of people will lose their health care because they don't want to cover a particular program and extend the program. There's something wrong in the way that system works. It's just really fucked up. I guess my point is it can't go on like that. And a population that may not know what I just said is true, which it is true because I've been to those places, they get lulled into this idea that, well, this is the greatest country on earth. And so if we have shitty healthcare, a shitty education, a shitty media, etc., then that's just normal. And I'm saying none of that stuff is normal, or at the very least, it shouldn't be normal. We shouldn't have crumbling cities. I mean, for God's sake, they're giving hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, and yet they can't build high-speed rail, and they're cutting NASA. And don't get me on them cutting NASA. That shit is bugs the fuck out of me. No, fuck it. I will talk about them cutting NASA. When you get John F. Kennedy coming out, and he's making this speech about why does, Navy play Army? Why does a man climb Mount Everest? Why does this? And basically saying we do this because it shows the best of our capabilities. This is something that us as man, as human beings, are going to challenge ourselves with, not just random stuff of, can I avoid eating a hamburger today? But placing your capabilities, your intellect, your dexterity physically your capabilities of creating machines and whatnot against physical reality and task of physical reality, like getting a ship from a body that is moving at fantastic speeds around the cosmos to be able to reach another body that is flying through fantastic speeds around the cosmos, whether that's Mars or whether that's the moon. In this case, the moon. We're going to the goddamn moon. What did that do to a population that grew up during that time frame? Like, think about what those people were thinking when they saw that the United States was building a ship that could take man to the moon. What did it do to their imagination about frontiers, about planets, people thinking they're going to be living in a Jetson era, or their concept of what the future was going to be like? Because you had us focusing on going to the moon with the expectation that, well, obviously, we're just going to keep going. And what does it mean for my life and my responsibility in regards to what I want to do in regards to work and those type of things? And even just conception of knowing that we had the capability of doing that and that we would continue to do that and go further and further and further. And then they stop doing it. And now not just stop doing it, get to the point saying, why are we even paying for this? Why are we even exerting money to put money into NASA? Why are we doing this? Why are we wasting that money? What does it do to a population in regards to their imagination and everything else? You had people who were looking up at the stars and say, God damn it, we're going to the moon. And now, not so much. And not so much to put the kibosh, to put the screws to decapitate the budget for the organization and institution that actually accomplished that feat. It means something. There's something demoralizing to society when the very basic things and the things that it used to do, it's almost like Rome crumbling. People living in the dark ages where they would see monuments, they would see technology, but they would have no idea how that technology worked or how that technology was built. They just look at it and be like, wow, that was a better day. We lose something in this. It's indicative of something, that they're willing to decapitate what effectively dreams were made of at one point. Yeah, it sucks. Such is our current reality, though, right? Such is our current reality. Frank Friel, last one. When do you think some of these generals decide to act? Oh, I have no idea, Frank. I have no idea. I don't know if they're going to act at all. I mean, some of them may think to themselves, the president has lost his goddamn mind. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, Frank. It just looks like this can't keep going. At least that's my take. All right. We've come to the end. Usually boomers that still believe. Boomers still believe what? But you Yanks ran witch hunts over commies, right? Yes, we did. That's why we don't have commies here now. Yeah, we did. What is this? 50 Keen. I don't want any nation's flag flying over land on another planet. Yes. 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 Put this shit in stone. Yes. I am one of those people who believe the same thing, Keen. I have been known to bitch about Elon Musk. I've been known to bitch about Bezos. I have bitched remorselessly about these private institutions that are going into space, especially Elon Musk saying, I'm going to go to Mars. A billionaire just decides to go to Mars. What the fuck is that? Whose flag? Is he going to put a flag? Is he going to own Mars at this point, seeing that he's going to be the first one there and just start naming stuff? Well, this was going to be Elon Musk land or whatever. I don't like this idea of us as individual units going into space. For some, I have a strong sense that if we're going into space, it should be as a collective. And I get the sense that my sense is going to be wrong. This is going to look more like The Expanse as opposed to Star Trek, which again sucks. Which sucks. I don't know anybody that looks at The Expanse and says, hey, that's a great future. That's not a hopeful show, right? Like, that's not, like, Expanse is a good show. Love the characters in the show, and the books are fantastic. The books are even just as good, if not better. I forget, I think it was Brave who turned me on to that. But the thing that was so hard to get me to watch it and enjoy it was because it is such a dark, shitty version of the future. Politically, it's fantastic, but politically, it's fantastic because it's so shitty, if that makes sense. Like when you have, what is her name? Avasarala. Love that woman. God, I love that woman. That woman could be 80 years old and I love that woman. I married that woman at 80. She's such a good character on that show and in the books. And I'll tell you something else. If you read the books and then watch the show, you start to infuse the characters with life of the characters on the show. It does something to you. Dune is the same way. But that is not a hopeful future. I am not into this idea that China goes one part of the moon, sticks their flag down and says, all right, this is our part of the moon. And then they militarize their part of the moon because, of course, if you say this is mine, you have to have the ability to defend whatever is yours. And then the U.S. says, well, this is our part of the moon. So we're going to keep this part. And then you have these little private wars on the moon between the U.S. and China. That is not a good outcome. It is me being a dreamer. I get it. If we go to the cosmos, we should go as a unit, as a planet. We should go as a planet. Keen agreed. Keen, you have my full, complete, absolute, radical agreement. My full agreement. I'm sorry, I just saw that. It was like, yes, agreed. China does not own any part of the moon. Not yet. Not yet. Play it out, Feilu. Play it out. China is outstripping the United States in regards to its industrial capability, technical acumen, scientific acumen, all of these things. China has a space station that has been in space for years, just theirs. Not international, it's just theirs. China went to the dark side of the moon, apparently. Well, this was like a couple of years ago. Does China have the capability of building miniature nuclear reactors? Probably yes. Would China have the capability of building a machine that can take the dust from the moon, split it into various components that they need to, and use it to make bricks, rocks, whatever? Probably. China's industrial capability is amazing. The technical acumen is amazing. Could they do it? Yes. Will they do it? Well, obviously, they're going to go back to the moon at some point. Will they define the space that they land on? Theirs. Is that really beyond belief? And by the way, same thing for America, because what America is going to do is saying, well, China's going back to the moon, so America needs to go to the moon. I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And by the way, I'm not saying this Feilu in a sinister way. I don't mean this in a sinister way at all. I'm saying this is just a rational act. At least my take is a rational act. And all the comments. China and Russia are working as a project of building a moon base. Exactly. Exactly. And whose moon base will it be, Feilu? China and Russia's, right? Right? Again, I'm not saying that it's a sinister thing. I'm just saying it as a rational act. It's a rational act. All right. I'm going to end this because you guys got me talking about space. I'm feeling some kind of way. I'm going to say it would just be privatized based purely on extraction on the American side. On the American side. Well, what did you just make? The American side, right? The American side. Private ownership requires the ability to defend private property, right? If you have a house and any random could take that house, is it really private? Why wouldn't that also apply on the moon? If it's private property on the moon, wouldn't the quote-unquote state need to be able to defend the private property, whether it's on the moon or whether it's on planet Earth? Calling it the American side on some level gives this notion of ownership. And anything that's owned, especially if it's under US law, you have police who are supposed to be there to defend it, or a military, in the larger sense, that's supposed to be able to defend it. Why would the moon be different? Just ask. Why would the moon be different? But again, I could be entirely talking out of my ass, which is infinitely possible at this point. I am going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. Guarantee we ain't going to have a moon base in my lifetime. It depends. It depends on how old you are. Depends on how old you are. And it depends on who you mean by we. When I look at humanity in the cosmos, I look at it as humanity in the cosmos. Now, that could be wrong. I get that. But that's the way I look at it. Whether it's Chinese, Russian, American, Indian, rando who, got abducted. My point of view is it's humanity going out into space. It's a human accomplishment. And I know first man to walk on the moon, Neil Armstrong, is like an American, so fuck it. This is American accomplishment. Fair enough. Accept that. But we got like 20 people who walked on the moon. At that point, it's like, okay, this is a human thing. It is possible for a moon base to be built in our lifetime if a country defines that that's their objective to do so. Especially if you get microelectronics or micro power generators. The moment that you get like a nuclear power plant, like a miniature power plant, you're off to the races. Lights, heat, energy. I'm under this weird stuff with the moon in a way that the human being sees, like views the stuff on the planet. We're so accustomed to Earth that a lot of those things are different. Even the way we would walk on the moon, all of those things are somewhat different. I'm not saying we build a palatial estate, but a base is doable. I mean, why not? Base is doable. Oh, 53. A base is doable in your lifetime. It's doable. You may not go to that base, but a base is doable. Kareen, Jamal, can other nations contribute to the base? That's up to, we had the International Space Station. An entire point of that space station was for all of the nations to be able to join together in order to make that space station and build it. Do you see that today happening? What I mean by that is, do you see Russia, Europe, China, the US, etc., coming together to do something like that? Or do you see these people breaking down into various blocks? And the fact that Donald Trump put the kibosh on NASA ain't going nowhere. That's fucking defunct. And so, do I see us contributing? No. Do I see Europe contributing? No. Do I see Russia and China maybe doing something together with India and other BRICS nations? If there's some kind of economic advantage, yes. Or technical advantage, yes. But we've broken into Cold War blocks in the way that we operate on the planet. It's kind of hard to foresee us as a world doing something without something radically changing on this planet. And it may. Can't see around corners, Kareem. So, yeah. Doc J04, The Expanse, good, accurate portrayal of space. Yes. Yes. Gravity. Do you know, like if you're watching comic books, let's say Spider-Man, for example, New York is like a character in Spider-Man. Like it's hard to make Spider-Man without New York. You probably could, but New York has almost like a physical character in the thing that's in the background. It's ever present, but it's like a thing. Spider-Man looks weird when he's not in New York. The people, the character of the city, all of those things show very clearly in the comic books. Gravity is like that in Expanse. Gravity is ever present. It is the way the ships do maneuvers, the pressure that's being applied. Hell, they were even using gravity to torture a group that wasn't accustomed to Earth's gravity, in which case the pressure that was being applied on them. Imagine being on a spaceship and you were in 0G. The spaceship moves in a particular direction, whatever that direction is. Based on the acceleration, kind of like an elevator, is going to push you to a particular side of the ship, in which case you're now standing on what you consider to be the floor of the ship because the ship is going in a particular direction, accelerating, and is creating this kind of fake level of what you consider to be gravity. Einstein says it's indistinguishable from gravity, so let's just call it gravity. Let's say that you run into a problem because there are now people chasing you because they want to kill you. And so you need to push the ship faster. But the faster you push the ship, the more gravity is going to press against you. Think of like being on an elevator, and the elevator decides to go 4 times faster than what it's supposed to. Well, it's pushed you down. It makes you feel like the gravity is heavier. So it's 1G, 2G, 3G, etc. And that becomes part of the show. Trying to evade, for example, trying to speed up in order to catch something. And the pressure that is being applied to them as they're doing the speed up. It's not just you hit a button and you just go. It's you have to deal with the real world physics in the show itself. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. That's an extra constraint in the way that it operates. It's really good. God, you got me talking about sci-fi. You got me talking about sci-fi. Yeah, The Expanse is good, man. It's a good show. Holden, God, I love Holden in that show. I love him to death in that show. His relationship with Naomi, love her to death. Amos, I wasn't a big fan of him, but he grew on me over time. Kind of. He's a sociopath, but he was raped as a kid and all this other stuff, so he's kind of fucked up. Yeah, it's such a good show, but it's dark. It's just very dark. You're speaking my language. What happens in The Expanse? I'm not going to tell you what happens in The Expanse. You have to read the books or watch. But it's really good. It is a really good show. It is a damn good show. And the books are fantastic too. Because the show stops and the books keep going. And so I have to be honest with you, I hate his later books. It gets very wokish. I don't like what they do to Holden in those books at the end. But up until the point where they encounter that life form, oh, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. President Jafar, have you watched Foundation? Yes. The books. I've read through the books. In fact, I think I've read the entire series of Foundation. I haven't read the prequels for Foundation, but the books are fantastic. Oh, they're so good. They're so good. The television show looks beautiful. It looks beautiful. I'll put it that way. I love the dynasty, the genetic dynasty. I thought that was a good idea. The robot, good idea. I don't feel anything for the characters with the exception of Harry Seldon. Seldon I like. The rest, not so much. Not so much. But it's a good show, though. It is a good show. It is a good show. But the books are better. The show isn't as good as the book. No, the books are better. The books are so much better. Oh, they're so much better. So much better. All right. Let's call this a day. Foundation and the robot books connect at the end. Yes, they do, but I haven't read the robot books. That I haven't had the chance to read. But Foundation, oh, I fell in love with Foundation. So humans expand across the cosmos, the galaxy, fight each other. It's kind of, Frank, Little Bell, kind of. It's a little bit more complicated. So basically, humans expand across the galaxy. They have a fusion drive, and the fusion drive has allowed them to hit remarkable speeds, but not like warp or anything like that. So they can go about the galaxy or the solar system, let's say it that way. You have some people that work on like asteroids, like that's their job. And it develops into a society of sorts. And so this particular society, Belters, they live in the belt. And in living in the belt, they process or they, and they're trade relationships that end up being created between Earth, the belt, and Mars. The humans who went to Mars have a more militant point of view because from their point of view, it's like we're building a world, we're building a society. And so we're willing to take on hardship in order to build this society. This is what we're doing. So their technology is far more advanced, kind of militaristic in the sense that they are more advanced militarily. Mars has a culture of its own. The belt has a culture of its own. Because Mars gravity is less than Earth, the people grow slightly differently. And if they're going to do anything on Earth, they have to train for it because the gravity on Earth is so much heavier. So they're not accustomed to it. They're not accustomed to the horizon. There's several things that going from one planet to another creates difficulties in doing, unless you're from Earth, in which case you can go to all these places. On the belt, it's even worse because the gravity on the belt is dramatically less. And so trying to take somebody from the belt and put them on Earth they're going to die. Now, there are politics that are coming into play, especially between Earth and Mars, and between the belt, who feels a certain level of miseration and feels a certain level of being left out of, let's say, the richness that Earth is accustomed to, or for that matter, even that Mars is accustomed to. So there's drama and chaos between these groups of human beings. All of this is thrown into the shitter when an alien species is found that is so radically different than anything that we would think of as a species that it throws all of this into chaos. There's also a war that starts by elements of the belt that are working with elements from Mars, almost like as a rogue group, to get these big guys dramatic military technology, using the information that they were able to glean from, let's call it a techno life form. It gets complicated, but it's really good in the way that it's done. And there's a build up to it. So it's not like first book. I mean, you're talking about like several books out or several seasons out where it just has a slow build that builds up to this kind of crescendo with it. It's good. It's well done. The politics is well done. Physics is well done. It's a good book. All right. You all have a fantastic rest of your day. We've had our sci-fi hour. I watched a new show called 3-1 Atlas, 3-Eye Atlas. What is it? 3 represents the third interstellar object. Atlas is what they call it. Yeah. Yeah, I know people want that to be something. I don't know what it is. To me, it's not something until it's something. Like, it's interesting. But I don't know what it is. And until there's more to it, then I'm not sure. Star Trek Troopers. Troopers is interesting. It's interesting as a thought piece. Like this militaristic society. I never heard people compare it to Star Trek. The historian is wrong on that one. He's out of his fucking mind. Those things are very different. You guys have a fantastic. Yeah, I missed Sci-Fi Hour. Yes, you did. You missed Sci-Fi Hour. It's just wacky. But it's not just wacky. There's more to it. Like, think of the propaganda that's built into it. Think of this idea of what it means to be a citizen, that the people who are citizens are the ones who are willing to give up their life for their country, which gives you the right to be called a citizen. A very militaristic society, a very propagandized society. No, there's more to it than it's just been wacky. There's a level of interest in it. Space ice troopers. Space ice troopers. All right. You all be safe. You all stay awesome. I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Au revoir. Back at you, Stephanie. Be safe, guys.